Soared again to 8.9% in July, according to the EU Statistics Agency, and a former British ambassador to the US, Sir Christopher Meyer, has died at the age of 78. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story, and that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
The nation's quadriplegics immobilized on Washington in support of stem cell research, and a Penn State t-shirt is awkwardly looked away from. And now for the weekly feature your fragile, susceptible mind already has your lips salivating for. This is The Onion Week in Review. Sources reported today that 10-year-old Brandon Thomas, who is currently homesick at his friend Kevin's sleepover, needs to just tough it the fuck out.
I don't feel like playing Xbox right now.
The pathetic little bitch who claims he just doesn't feel like eating any birthday cake or joining in any activities with his friends, frankly needs to grow a pair because his parents only live 10 minutes away, for Christ's sake. Here's what the whiny pansy had to say for himself.
I wasn't crying. It's just allergies. I want to go home.
What a f***ing wuss. In other news, a voicemail from mom is deleted 3 words in, and a man with nice eyes is blown. All right, now off with you. I can't have you seeing me like this. For more, visit theonion.com/newsbeat.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. All you got to do, dial in 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And you can bring up anything you want to discuss. You can also join us online anytime you want over at freetalklive.com. We have a variety of features waiting for you there. You can enjoy those on us. Unlike a lot of other talk show websites where they want to charge you monthly to use their sites, ours is free. So please go to freetalklive.com. Nobody was here a few moments ago. I don't know if he got lost outside when he was smoking a cigarette or whatever. But Chris, you and I were two of the folks that went out to watch Nobody's Sentencing yesterday morning. Was it yesterday morning? 2 days ago. 2 days ago.
Was it 2 days ago? It was Thursday.
It was yesterday.
Was it Friday?
No,
it was Friday.
It was yesterday.
Yesterday was Thursday.
Yeah,
it was Thursday.
So we went yesterday morning to the federal court church in Concord, New Hampshire, and watched the first sentencing in the Crypto 6 case. For listeners that don't know, our studio was raided at 6 in the morning on March 16th, I think it was, 2021. And you know, cold in New Hampshire at that time, 10 degrees outside, I think is what it was. No knock raid.
I still think it was colder than that, way colder.
Okay, well, no knock raid, and you know they smashed in windows of the studio here. They smashed in the side window by the front door. They flew in drones. They had upwards of 50 armed agents that were surrounding the house. Flashbang was
56 agents. It was in one of their documents.
Wow.
The FBI. That was just FBI agents, not even other law enforcement that was surrounding the house as well.
Flashbang was used. A smoke grenade, at least one, probably more than one. And then some video came out just recently, within the last several weeks, which was posted to the Free Keene channel on Odyssey. You can go to video.freekeene.com. You can see that there. Is that up on the Crypto 6
It is.
site?
It's on the Crypto 6 website now, too.
Okay, good to know. Thecrypto6.com. You can see some video from the night of that you recorded, Chris, because you showed up while it was happening.
There's actually 3 videos there now. So one of them is the interviews that you guys did, and then the video I had of morning of, and then the what was it, the security cam footage.
Cool. So check that out at thecrypto6.com. That'll get you up to date on what's been going on with the situation. Back in April, they threatened the Crypto 6. 6 people were arrested, not all in the same location. They did simultaneous raids on multiple different homes at that time and arrested 6 people. I was one of them, our co-host Nobody, and 4 other friends of ours. They charged us all with a bunch of felonies with relation to, you know, completely nonviolent, completely victimless, so-called financial crimes related to Bitcoin. And so that's sort of where this all started. And again, it was more than a year ago. I was in jail for a couple months. Nobody was in jail for 6 months before they finally let him out on bail. And then in April of this year, they threatened everybody in the case with more charges. So even more felony charges were going to be brought unless people started taking plea deals. And so 3 people decided to go ahead and take a plea and become federal felons for life on completely victimless charges.
It's really amazing the amount of coercion, and yet at the same time, in order to take a plea deal, you have to say that you were not coerced. It's unbelievable the stuff they basically are telling you have to lie in order to take a plea deal.
Yeah, and of course you have to pretend like the lie is the truth, otherwise
Right.
they won't take the plea offer. So, some people decided that they didn't want to deal with this anymore, and I never blame anybody for taking the plea. I've long advocated against it personally, but people got to do what's right for them in the moment, or what they feel is most right for them. And nobody is now joining us. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, sorry about that. I thought it was 6:30 when I went to the store, and I think I went through the Bermuda Triangle or something. 'Cause time just disappeared.
Well, good to have you here. We were just kind of recapping the whole Crypto 6 situation and talking about a couple, Andy and Renee, and yourself, who decided to take the plea rather than face even more charges and God knows how much longer, and all of the stress of having all that hanging over you. You had already spent 6 months behind bars, and so the idea that they were pitching to you was, hey, you take this plea and you probably will get time served, basically. And of course, the downside is you're now a federal felon for life, which you were just a state-level felon previously for selling cannabis. State felonies can be nullified or annulled, but not federal ones.
Well, federal felonies can be seceded from.
This is true. This is true.
Right. That's good.
That is the only way out.
Yes.
Check out nhexit.us for more information on that one.
Yes. Very, very important. Very important.
So this was the week. So again, you made that decision back in April, and so they dropped it down to just one charge of quote unquote wire fraud, which you referred to later as contempt of bank, because there wasn't actually a victim of this wire fraud. They're claiming the banks are the victims.
Which even during one of the hearings, the prosecutor admitted that there was no financial loss to the so-called victim.
I think it was the probation officer in the sentencing report who, or at least he's one of the people.
The prosecutor in the case during the motion to...
Yeah, didn't Sisti ask her at one point and she had to admit it?
Yes, she did. That was the motion to change the sentence. Change the... What was it? The plea. It was the motion to change the plea hearing. For you, that
then it wasn't Sisti. I don't know who asked that question.
Where is when it happened.
I think the judge asked. Wasn't it the judge that asked? See, that's the damn problem with these federal court hearings is we can't go back and let's check the video, because they don't let anybody record video. Their cameras.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could have a speedy and public trial?
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Somebody wrote that in the Constitution thinking it might actually happen, but surprise!
I actually did some research on the court rule, because it's just a court rule that says
no video, right? Yep.
No recording.
And there have been at certain points federal trials that have been filmed. It's just they don't allow it currently,
right?
And
so
I think it was
trialed,
sort of, is how they phrased it.
What happened?
Well, they don't want it done in cases that are going to make them look bad, also,
which is a lot of them.
Oh yeah.
But here's the thing: what they did was, I think it goes back to 1946, and what happened was there were some filming of some trials, and some of the defendants used that as an appeal, and they said, well, because there were cameras in the courtroom, it changed how the witnesses behaved, and so therefore I need to get another trial or have my conviction overturned because, and I don't remember all the details, but that was essentially what they were saying, was that somehow having it public prejudiced the whole situation against the defendant. And so that's the excuse that they used. They actually had the balls to say that we're prohibiting recording devices to protect the defendants.
If that was the truth, right?
The easy solution to that then is to say, well, if you people want to film this thing, you need to sign a waiver that says you will not appeal on those grounds.
Yeah, which I'd be more than happy to do.
And here's the thing: what happens if you guys wanted to film, right? Like
no go.
Personally, personally wanted to film your own trial.
Can't be done.
Yeah.
And I did talk to my attorney about this, and he didn't seem like he wanted to do anything. Didn't think anything could be done about it, because this is an issue that basically the Supreme Court sets. So I don't know if there is any easy way to challenge that in any way, shape, or form. It's just one of those things that it's been almost not quite 100 years. 80 years almost that this rule has been in effect. You cannot even take a picture. You can't do video. You can't do audio.
What I would imagine would happen is you'd have to put some sort of motion in, and then you would have to appeal the motion because they're going to rule against you because it's the Supreme Court, and you'd have to get it all the way back up to the Supreme Court and hope that they take it. And then there's like less than 1% chance that they would actually take it on appeal. And then they would have to also change, override their prior ruling. And that's possible.
And odds are it wouldn't happen before the trial.
The odds are it wouldn't happen. And which is why it's so difficult to change things once they're set in stone like this.
Yeah.
It's not that it's impossible, but for somebody to have a trial, be going through all of this, garbage,
and then also, and this is interesting because you guys are activists. Like, if anybody's going to try that, it's going to be somebody like you. But how often do you get an activist, taking something to trial?
Very rarely.
Yeah. So if it's not now, it's never going to happen.
We got more coming up here, and we haven't really even gotten into what happened at the hearing this week for Nobody's sentencing. But basically, his case is pretty much closed. There's still a couple years of probation to deal with, but he can use crypto again, which is great news for him. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Free Talk Live.
The vast majority of the, quote unquote terrorists that are acting supposedly in the name of Islam, those people are not actually Muslims. They are nominally Muslim in the same way that a large percentage of Americans, when asked on a questionnaire, will say, yeah, I'm a Christian.
Right.
But they couldn't necessarily tell you all of the tenets of the faith. Most of the people in the U.S. military claim to be Christian, and they're killing people overseas. Not in the name of Christianity, but in the name of America, because God is on our side. So, you do have, to some extent, Christians killing people.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here. You can join us at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Coming up, the FBI is just... Their public relations needs some help. They need to stop going after victimless people, but they don't. They've got a real thing for going after people's money and their property, and we're going to get into a story about them raiding a company that offered essentially private safe deposit boxes, or at least what were supposed to be private. Now the federal government has their hands all over it. That happened last year. There's an update in that story. We'll share that with you on the way here. Of course, the FBI was primarily the agency involved in raiding the Crypto 6, which was you and I, nobody, and 4 of our closest friends. 3 of the Crypto 6 have taken plea deals. A 4th was dropped from the case, and I think she had to pay some large amount of money in order to get them to leave her alone. But that's my understanding of hearing through the rumor mill what happened with her. And the theory is that they didn't want to call a 60-plus-year-old woman in a case where they're going to be claiming that the defendants were taking advantage of elderly people, but who knows what their real reason was for dropping those charges. But so they dropped the charges on 1 of the 6. 3 of the 6 took a guilty plea on 1 count of so-called wire fraud.
I believe the rumor is partially correct and partially false, in that was their proposed plea agreement, and that did not actually happen. So
she didn't have to pay?
I believe that's correct.
Oh, that's great news. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, they literally just dropped the case without her accepting it.
Oh, thank goodness. I'm really glad to hear that. But they're going to make you pay, nobody. They stole a bunch of stuff when they raided our houses in March of 2021, including a lot of gold and silver, including gold backs. From your house. They took all the stuff like that from this side of the house, and we're in a duplex, and they took it from your side as well. And part of the plea arrangement was that you will have to forfeit those items, along with, what was it, $10,000 worth of cryptocurrency or something?
Yeah. So basically, my net worth yesterday was $15,000, and now the federal government is going to steal 12 of it.
Yeah,
so
you really have to wonder about these, government goons, because they're going after somebody with $15,000 in
they spent millions,
in their
by the
bank.
way, in this
right.
investigation.
They're spending millions of dollars going after people with $15,000. Is this really a good use of your tax dollars that they also stole?
The thing is, it's not their money.
That's right.
They don't care. It's just like, that's why it makes sense for, Hunter Biden to take $100 million from the Ukrainians and his father to pump $100 billion back into the Ukraine. That's 1,000 to 1 profit margin, but it doesn't matter to the Bidens because they get to steal all they want from us.
Yeah, I was blown away. Was it the sentencing hearing? I forget. They didn't use. I don't think it was the term indigent. That means like mentally handicapped or something like that, or maybe it is. No. Maybe that is a term.
Poor.
But they were asking.
Actually, that's ironic because that's actually my papal name is Pope Indigent.
Well, but that's the funny thing. It's like the judge was literally asking about like, are you indigent? And it's like, well, hold on, wait a minute.
Not yet.
If that's the case, right? And it's assumed effectively that you are, then that means effectively probably the government mostly goes after people who don't have the money in the by the time you get to this point in the trial, you don't have any money. So what's
because they take it from you.
You're basically punished, without having a conviction even.
That's right. I've been on bail conditions that have been highly restrictive for the last 18 months, roughly,
right,
at this point.
Right. But it then begs the question of, well, what's the point of the trial? I mean, you've already destroyed somebody's life. You've already made them indigent.
13 months.
Well,
So they don't want to.
But you get the point that I'm making, right?
Well,
like
the old statement is you can beat the rat, but you can't beat the ride. Meaning that whenever the cops want to, and it's true at the federal level as it is at the state level. It's just worse at the federal level in a lot of cases because they're just nastier and they know how to screw people even harder, and they have various different ways to do it. But even just on a typical police arrest, like if they catch you and release you, well, you don't get the time back, right? Like if they take you off the streets from a protest, trump up some BS charge, and then later just let you walk and drop the charges,
which isn't even that unusual. And sometimes if they really want to, hurt you, they will actually make you go through the trial, right? As opposed to dropping
even
it
though they're
going
to lose it or whatever. Right? Like there's no punishment to a prosecuting attorney for the state for losing a trial.
Right. I mean, it's more than likely, and they do this all the time. They will arrest somebody who's protesting, force them to pay for a lawyer, which will probably cost $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and then they'll drop the case.
That's right.
It's like
then all the stress, all the time, all the money, it's gone, and you don't get it back. You don't get to sue them because all they have to say is, "Oh, well, we're just doing our jobs, and we were doing the best we could, and we had good intentions."
And the point in that situation is that's for a insignificant charge, usually
like a state charge,
right? That's for like a disorderly conduct type of charge, or even though you weren't disorderly, even though they can't prove it, which is why they drop it. But then what happens when they really want to go after you? They just they drum up more charges, if there's no basis for them.
My favorite arrest is I got arrested for being a felon in possession of a garden tool because I had
I remember that
machete in my trunk. So they go through the whole trial, and
were you actually tried on that?
Not through the trial, but we go up to the day of trial.
Yeah,
and they're insisting they're going to push this thing. They're going to push this thing. Day of trial, they drop it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been
then that's not the end of the story. Then they come back, they get an indictment on the same damn charge, arrest
double
me
jeopardy
as I'm going into the, no, because jeopardy doesn't attach until the first witness starts giving testimony.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
So then they arrest me on a Friday as I'm going into court, actually, to change my name to Nobody, drag me back to Manchester.
Did you
hold me in jail for 2 days?
Was that twice they held you in jail?
I'm going to tell the story here. Don't worry. Hold me in jail for 2 days. Get an indictment, so I get back with my lawyer and do all this thing. And when it gets to the day of trial, they drop it again because these scumbags know they don't have a leg to stand on. They never did.
So that was twice that you ended up in a cage.
2 false arrests.
Wow.
And no compensation.
The people who did that should be in prison.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're not. They didn't even get fined. Probably didn't get even a smack on the hand.
No, they'll never get anything for it.
No, that's their...
And that's why eventually the people are going to rise up in this country, and there's going to be guillotines, and I will personally enjoy the show.
Well, that's not to say that those people don't, deserve some sort of bad karma. Like I said, I don't think violence is the solution, but you're right, Nobody. If people are pushed far enough, that's what's going to happen.
Violence may not be the solution, but I'm going to offer them just as much protection as they've offered me all my life.
Yeah, I certainly would not lift a finger to assist any of those people.
My eyes won't be getting wet when they,
The number is 603-283-6160, because the fact is, humans are animals, and, you push them far enough, you corner enough of them, some are going to lash out. And the number is 603-283-6160. If you want to join the show, we got more on the plea situation with the Crypto 6, with Nobody being the first, and that happened just yesterday morning. It's Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The United Nations says there's been no let-up in attacks on Ukrainian civilians, but there is hope that grain shipments will soon begin after last week's UN-brokered deal was signed by Russia and Ukraine. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
Addressing a Security Council meeting, the UN Under-Secretary-General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, said the recently brokered grain deal was a beacon of hope. It's believed the first shipment of grain could leave Ukraine on Friday, after key details are worked out. While there's optimism over the impact that'll have on global food prices, UN member states again traded accusations during the Security Council meeting. The US said Russia had set fire to the UN Charter and carried out war crimes in Ukraine. Moscow's representative at the UN said Western arms sent to Kiev are being used to kill children in the east of the country. William Denzelo, New York.
The governor of the American state of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency after at least 16 people died in flash floods caused by heavy rains. Governor Andy Beshear says he fears the death toll will rise. A conservative member of the US Supreme Court has mocked world leaders, including Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry, after they condemned his controversial ruling last month overturning abortion rights in America. Speaking at a conference in Rome, Justice Samuel Alito brushed off criticism from several prominent figures, as FSN's Washington correspondent Benji Hire reports.
Samuel Alito, the man responsible for drafting the ruling rolling back the constitutional right to an abortion, said that he had the honor of writing
the only Supreme Court decision in the history of that institution that has been lambasted by a whole string of foreign leaders.
Amongst those referenced, French President Emmanuel Macron, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and Prince Harry.
The Duke of Sussex addressed the United Nations and seemed to compare the decision with the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Mr. Alito, a Catholic, added in his address that religious liberty was under attack in many places. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that the justice's politicized remarks should be alarming to voters. Benji Hire, Washington, D.C.
Inflation in the Eurozone soared again to 8.9% in July, according to flash estimates from the EU's statistics agency. It's a new record for the 19 countries that use the euro currency. And Sir Christopher Meyer, a former British ambassador to the United States, has died at the age of 78. He served in Washington during the administrations of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and suffered a stroke while holidaying in the French Alps. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio with you tonight, it's Ian,
nobody, and Chris.
We are talking about the federal government gang and their attacks on peaceful people. We'll get into the FBI raiding the safe deposit box company out in California last year. What is the FBI trying to hide about that raid, according to Reason Magazine? We got that story on the way here. But first, we're talking about the raid on our studio that happened last year, the Crypto 6 case. You can go to thecrypto6.com to learn more about what transpired. But to catch you up to date, it was yesterday morning when Nobody, our co-host here, took the very first plea deal in that particular case. 3 are going to plea. 1 of those 3 did. So there's 2 more pleas to come. That'll be late August. At this time, they had to reschedule theirs due to personal circumstances. So that'll be toward the end of August when Renee and Andy are expected also to take a plea to so-called wire fraud. And normally, if you were to look at the wire fraud charge, Now, nobody, you had to agree that you were guilty of this in order for them to accept your plea. And, it was an interesting hearing. And again, there's no video because it's federal court. I wish there was, because it would be really educational and people could learn stuff from watching these trials. But the judge basically put you on the spot and had you confirm that you really are guilty of the so-called wire fraud charge,
and you weren't being coerced,
and that you weren't under threat.
That was the humorous part at the motion to change, the plea deal. That was the humorous part.
Yeah, I think.
And
your
response,
something about that.
Your
too.
response,
I am
was
under threat.
Hilarious because you could not say that you weren't being coerced. So you had to say something like, "Well, outside of what you mean," or something, by coercion, because the government doesn't consider it
the threat of prosecution.
Right.
Yeah. And you did say that.
Right.
Yeah.
and he didn't cancel the plea deal hearing after that.
The judge did, you could see the expression on his face. He was thinking about that for a moment, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, I know exactly what he means," and because it wasn't just a simple no to the answer to the question, right? So, and he fully understood because he had to think about it for just a moment. But he's like, "Oh, who am I talking to? I'm talking to a guy who sees everything different. He's an activist, right? Like,
yeah.
So, yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, humor and learning are, I think, wired to the same circuits. I've been known to say, and I think it's close to true, that laughter is your reward for the recognition of error.
Yeah.
And so if you can give somebody that little pause to say, what does he mean? Oh yeah, I see what he means.
Yeah. There's been so many great, entertaining aspects to the hearings, right? I can only imagine what the trial is going to be like. But just the hearings.
Some of my earlier trials.
It's so unfortunate.
You can see those; they're online.
Yeah,
because
the
they were
state
in state
ones.
courts.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate that it isn't being filmed. We can't film it because the Fed, won't let us.
Do we have the? I don't think we got the "If You're Happy and You Know It" trial. On
the "If You're Happy and You Know It, Rattle Your Chains." That one.
Yeah.
I can't believe we didn't get that. I mean, I think we got that. It's got to be out there.
Maybe we did. I'll have to look
There's
online
definitely
and see if it's up
video
there.
in the state liquor store of that.
The thing is, that wasn't liquor. That wasn't liquor store. That was
what happened is
it was a different one.
I was before the judge. I'd been in jail for
wasn't it Burke in Keene?
Yeah, it was Burke. And he said, "Well, I'm going to set your bond at $2,000. What do you think of that?" And I said, "If you're happy and you know it, rattle your chains."
And then you did,
and started rattling my shackles. And he said, "I'm going to make it $5,000."
So when you look at the charge of so-called wire fraud, you can search for elements of wire fraud, right? Because in every criminal charge, there's always certain things they have to prove, right? If you were to go to trial. Now, they don't have to prove anything if you take a plea, but if they were to go to trial, they have to prove certain things. And one of the number one thing they have to prove is the defendant voluntarily and intentionally devised or participated in a scheme to defraud another out of money. Now, there are some court decisions that have said that property also is included, right? So, obviously, if you're trying to defraud somebody out of their car,
you would think that it would say that if that's what they were meant.
It doesn't, but there's court there's court cases.
Yeah, they like to redefine words.
And the thing is, it doesn't really mean defraud in the common sense, because you don't have normally, in order to prove a fraud case, an ordinary fraud case, you have to prove that this person was deprived of some property that they should have had.
That's not true, because you can also get charged with this if you simply attempted it. So they don't.
Isn't that a different charge?
Or that was the intention,
right?
But the thing about wire fraud is anything you say to a bank that is inaccurate constitutes fraud.
That's what they're saying.
Even if they're not defrauded.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. In
I
this
think
case.
they're doing even more than that. They're saying even if you tell the truth, you're still committing fraud. But
they're not making that accusation.
I think they're alluding
what they're saying
to it.
is what they're saying is, and they haven't come right out and said this, but
sure.
based on my research into wire fraud cases, they're saying that even if you don't tell the whole truth, they consider it fraud. So if they ask you, what's this wire transfer for, sir? And you don't tell them exactly what it is for.
When they ask me and I say it's for business, that's fraud?
They could charge you with that.
That's
I think
insane.
So. I think so.
That's insane.
I don't think that... I think they would have a very hard time prosecuting that particular.
Well, that's the thing. We think they're going to have a hard time prosecuting this as well, because the wire fraud allegations in this case are about that ridiculous. Like, they're about that level of absurd. And so, another question that we haven't really found out yet, but it's likely that there's never been a case like this before, where, like, normally wire fraud's brought when somebody tries to defraud some person out of their bank account or some other kind of money or property or whatever.
They keep alluding to, these victims that aren't even, they're effectively saying the banks are the victims, but then they allude to these other victims that have nothing to do with the Crypto 6. That's the other thing that blows my mind.
You're talking about people that got ripped off by online scammers and then ultimately bought some Bitcoin.
Right, but it has nothing to do with the Crypto 6.
That's correct.
It's some other party.
They're trying to tar us with that.
It's like saying because somebody, a scammer used the bank, right? The bank is somehow
the bank manager should be
fraud.
charged.
Right.
Or another example of this would be, a lot of times the online scammers, they won't have their victims buy Bitcoin. But that happens a lot. But they'll have the victim go down to CVS or Target or Walmart and buy prepaid gift cards, which you can get usually a $500 to $1,000 limit or something like that. And they walk through a checkout lane, which I tested this, by the way, at CVS. You can go to the automated checkout and put one of those gift cards up there, and all that it does is it flashes up a message on the screen saying, "You're not being a victim of a scam, are you? Press yes to continue."
And the crazy thing about that is the vending machines all had big signs up. I literally have pictures of them, warning users that you may be a victim of fraud. I don't remember exact words, but it's basically something akin to that. So I think those machines had that before the CVS's had the signs up, because I remember going into a CVS and they didn't, or maybe it was a different store, but not all of the stores that sell the Visa prepaid type cards or
even ask you the question.
Yeah, they don't even ask you that question or have any signs.
But they're not charging the Target manager who sold this one guy that I know of. One of the victims of these online scammers bought like $16,000 worth of gift cards at Target.
How do you even do that?
You go on multiple trips, or you buy, or you just buy a bunch of them, and they just don't know what to do about it, because ultimately, even though they may be suspicious, it's like, well, okay, you're not being scammed, are you, sir?
Yeah.
Oh no, this is for my online lover. Well, there's such a thing as a romance scam, right? Have you heard of romance scam? Oh yeah, no, this is for real. This is my wife, my online wife. and then it's like, sell me these cards, and you want to do what your customer wants you to do in that case.
Yeah, and most of the time they'll mislead you anyway.
They will. There's more coming up here. It's Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here, and you can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And nobody. And Chris.
We are talking sort of generally about the Crypto 6 case. We're not allowed to, well, you're not under these restrictions now, nobody, because you've completed your plea deal. The sentencing has happened as of yesterday morning, so you don't have the same pretrial restrictions that I do. I'm not allowed to discuss the case.
What does that mean exactly?
I presume it means I can't talk about the parts that aren't public, right? Like I can't talk about the discovery or that kind of thing. But there's no reason why I can't comment on the indictment, for instance, which is completely public and anybody can read that. But obviously, you still have to be careful in those sorts of circumstances. So we're talking about the quote-unquote wire fraud charge that you did take a guilty plea to. And what they're doing here with this case, from the side of the feds that I can tell, is basically the regulatory agencies are saying, we want to regulate Bitcoin. And so FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and we're seeing it with SEC with the library case as well, which you attended last week, didn't you?
I did attend that.
We didn't talk about that at all.
Did we not talk about that?
I don't think we did. Let's get to that coming up here in a bit. But in that case, that's a civil case. There's no criminal charges at this time. I think they can bring criminal charges.
So you were actually right. And I asked Jeremy about this, and he said what you said. There's basically there's only. It's only a civil case, and it's only against Library. He is not personally liable or charged either civilly or criminally. So, which is the opposite of what I thought. I thought both Library and Jeremy were charged criminally.
No,
and
not yet.
I think I was thinking civilly for Library as well, or something like that.
But no, it's just a civil case in the case of Library. In our case, Ari and I are facing combined hundreds of years in prison. If all of us were, sentenced to the maximum, which, to be fair, even if we were found guilty, we probably won't be getting maximum sentences. But that's how serious these things are. This one wire fraud charge that you just got sentenced on, nobody, has a maximum of 30 years in prison.
That's crazy.
And it's only 20 if it's not involving a financial institution. But if the quote-unquote wire fraud involves a financial institution, it's instantly goes up to 30 years.
Well, I mean, the banks own the politicians, so they get lots of special protection. Special protection. It's interesting because you can rob a poor person to death, but don't you dare rob somebody who's filthy rich.
All right, I'm going to ask a question I sort of already know the answer to, but how do you commit wire fraud without a bank?
Any communication over a telephone makes it wire fraud. It doesn't have to be a wire transfer.
Yeah, any interstate communication, phone, internet, email, you name it, whatever goes across state lines.
Maybe it's me that's mistaken, but I think most people understand wire fraud to mean like a wire transfer.
No, that's not correct at all.
Do you guys think most people think that wire fraud
I don't think
means
most people
some
have
sort
ever even heard of these things.
We've heard of wire fraud. Interesting.
It's not uncommon. Like Thanos, the woman who did the blood company, she tried to be a cut rate Steve Jobs. I don't know if you remember. Probably a psychopath. But that's what they charge her with was
there's a lot of people
fraud,
that get charged with it, but I think just most people don't pay attention to criminal indictments or whatever. But wire fraud's sort of the newer version of mail fraud. Prior to you being able to talk on a phone, there were people that were scamming people over mail, and so they came up with mail fraud, and basically they have the same very similar elements. It's just instead of the mail, it would be phone calls,
sort of remote communications and involving fraud.
Correct. Yeah, you cannot be charged with wire fraud if you scam somebody face to face,
right? Because
there's no electronic communication in that case.
Yeah, that's why. That was the key word why I said remote.
But what I think all this comes down to, whether it's the SEC or FinCEN, the FBI, of course, doing their bidding in this case, this is the regulatory agencies are basically claiming, well, we have the right to regulate Bitcoin, even though Congress hadn't done anything about that. So we're going to shoehorn cryptocurrency and Bitcoin into these decades-old laws that are on the books about money transmission or
do you know, are they considering that a reinterpretation? How are they phrasing it? Are they phrasing it as a reinterpretation?
No, they're just interpreting it in their favor. So that's what they're doing is they're interpreting the existing statutes to say, well, we can do this too.
But they're not calling it a reinterpretation?
I don't think so. I mean, it is ultimately a reinterpretation.
Well, that's
but
what
it's
I mean.
Just how they interpret the statutes.
Obviously, it didn't exist at the time.
Correct. So cryptocurrency didn't come out until 2009.
Yeah,
and these statutes were written in the 90s. It just seems so weird
that they're not
or earlier.
Yeah, I don't know. I've actually heard them say it's a reinterpretation either.
It doesn't matter if it's a reinterpretation or not. They are interpreting the statutes to say they can do these things. So what they do, Chris, is they bring charges against people and they say, this is what we think is going to, we think this is going to fly in front of a jury, and most people take a plea deal. So they never actually, these trials almost never go to actual trial.
In the case of
so they get their way.
The FCC and internet service providers, they have literally said that they're reinterpreting, the law that authorizes them to.
And maybe they would use
regulate.
that word here. I don't know.
And that's why I was kind of curious if they had used that word in this particular situation, if anybody had heard that.
No, I don't know, and I don't think that really matters. Ultimately,
it doesn't.
It's what they're doing.
We had a deal. I have changed the deal. Pray I do not alter it further.
Well, I mean, but that's exactly. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say. It's like what I'm trying to point out is that they're sort of changing the deal on you.
Yeah.
Well, it was never a deal because I never had an agreement with them in the first place. But they are just...
That's very libertarian of you.
There's a new thing that has been invented, and the bureaucrats say, oh, this old law we can make this fit. And then they just, start charging people with things and see what happens.
And the damn gall of the whole thing. We didn't build Bitcoin for them. We built it so that we could trade outside of their crippled, impoverishing market, so that we could have a way where we would actually have opportunities, because all of the opportunities have been taken away in the outside market. It's not capitalism, because in capitalism, everybody's free to trade.
It's cronyism.
And in their system, only a few people get to trade, and the rest of us are their property.
The way you worded it at the sentencing hearing, I thought was perfect, actually. You explained that your ordinary individual is not allowed to invest without permission, effectively, and there's literally a requirement.
You have to have like $1 million.
You have to be a thing called a qualified investor,
accredited, I think,
or accredited investor.
Yeah, can you explain that to us?
Another term, but basically,
I think it's important.
You have to prove that you have like $1 million in assets, and then all of a sudden, all these opportunities open up to you that the peasants aren't allowed to access.
That's right,
and that's
crypto changes that. Crypto ends that process.
It did.
Well, it still does. It still does. It's just the U.S. is trying to crack down on it.
I mean, it doesn't totally fix the problems. You can sort of invest in crypto, but you can't invest in other things. It doesn't enable that. It doesn't solve that underlying problem.
Well, there are some solutions to that, Chris. There are things out there.
I'm curious. What
in decentralized finance?
What are we talking about?
So, for instance, there's something.
If you wanted to start a company, for example, issue the stock as a token.
But don't they consider that an IPO or something of that nature?
And they'll still go after? Once the scumbags are involved, then all opportunity is gone, because that's their job. It's the just us system.
There's a
who can trade in this system.
So what you're saying is it allows people to get around it, but not legally necessarily.
I don't know what the law is, so I can't say for sure whether it's legal or not. But I would say if you want to be safer,
you're not a lawyer. Call it a security.
If you want to be safer, you shouldn't be in the United States while offering or doing these things.
But if you want to be safe, you can't allow the United States government to continue to exist.
Well,
because it will go after you no matter where you are.
I want to answer your question.
You don't have to be American.
So I've heard of these things out there. Personally, I'm not interested in them, and I couldn't legally get into them anyway. But there are, and I don't know what the right word is, but there's sort of these digital equivalents to stocks. So let's say you want to. No. Listen for just a moment. There's a digital equivalent to a stock. So let's say you wanted to buy Tesla. The stock of Tesla. But you don't want to get into the stock market because of all the regulations and ID and know your customer and all this. And I don't know which blockchain it's on. I just know that this exists out there somewhere. So if you're interested, you'll have to look into it on your own. But there's essentially the digital equivalent of a stock. So for instance, people in China or Japan cannot easily buy U.S. stock market stocks, but they can get these digital tokens that are essentially tied to the value of those stocks.
This isn't NFTs, right?
No,
it's something else.
It's not NFTs. It's some sort of
NFTs, pictures of monkeys.
Some kind of stock equivalent, basically, where you can essentially buy and trade stocks without having to do it on the stock market.
Interesting.
Through cryptocurrency. So that's one other example. There's more coming up.
Stablecoin method.
There's more. Yeah, right. More coming up. Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The United Nations says there's been no let-up in attacks on Ukrainian civilians, but there is hope that grain shipments will soon begin after last week's UN-brokered deal was signed by Russia and Ukraine. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
Addressing a Security Council meeting, the UN Under-Secretary-General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, said the recently brokered grain deal was a beacon of hope. It's believed the first shipment of grain could leave Ukraine on Friday, after key details are worked out. While there's optimism over the impact that'll have on global food prices, UN member states again traded accusations during the Security Council meeting. The US said Russia had set fire to the UN Charter and carried out war crimes in Ukraine. Moscow's representative at the UN said Western arms sent to Kiev are being used to kill children in the east of the country. William Denzelo, New York.
The governor of the American state of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency after at least 16 people died in flash floods caused by heavy rains. Governor Andy Beshear says he fears the death toll will rise. A Conservative member of the US Supreme Court has mocked world leaders, including Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry, after they condemned his controversial ruling last month overturning abortion rights in America. Speaking at a conference in Rome, Justice Samuel Alito brushed off criticism from several prominent figures, as FSN's Washington correspondent Benji Haya reports.
Samuel Alito, the man responsible for drafting the ruling rolling back the constitutional right to an abortion, said that he had the honour of writing
the only Supreme Court decision in the history of that institution that has been lambasted by a whole string of foreign leaders.
Amongst those referenced, French President Emmanuel Macron, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry.
The Duke of Sussex addressed the United Nations and seemed to compare the decision with the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Mr. Alito, a Catholic, added in his address that religious liberty was under attack in many places. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that the justice's politicized remarks should be alarming to voters. Benji Haya, Washington, D.C.
Inflation in the Eurozone soared again to 8.9% in July, according to flash estimates from the EU's statistics agency. It's a new record for the 19 countries that use the euro currency. And Sir Christopher Meyer, a former British ambassador to the United States, has died at the age of 78. He served in Washington during the administrations of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and suffered a stroke while holidaying in the French Alps. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, remembering Bernard Cribbins, the great British character actor, died yesterday at the age of 93. In a career spanning 75 years, every generation will associate him with a different role, whether it's reading stories to children on the BBC's Jackanory, voicing up the Wombles, appearing in Fawlty Towers, or in latter years playing a beloved grandfather on Doctor Who. He was a quintessential British star adored by people the world over. In 1970, he played the role of Albert Perks, the station manager in The Railway Children, and on the film's 40th anniversary, he discussed the role in an appearance at the UK's National Media Museum.
It didn't feel to me that it was going to be historical, which it seems to be now. It was just for me, a very nice job working with old friends and, people I respected. And from that point of view, it was great. It was a lovely story, and the result, as we know, is terrific. But the applause and the adulation has gone on for 40 years. People who saw it when they were children, perhaps, talk about it still, and people who are revisiting it on television come and say how much they'd enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's lasted. It's got a hell of a good long life.
And so did Bernard Cribbins, who never thought of retiring. Just weeks ago, he was filming some fresh scenes for Doctor Who. The main news again, the United Nations warns there's been no let-up in Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians, despite a deal signed by the two countries that are supposed to allow grain shipments to resume from Ukraine. Eurozone inflation soared again to 8.9% in July, according to the EU Statistics Agency, and a former British ambassador to the US, Sir Christopher Meyer, has died at the age of 78. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story, and that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Tensions in Washington, D.C. reached a new high yesterday as several dozen members of Congress took a class of visiting school children hostage, barricaded themselves inside the Capitol Rotunda, and demanded $12 trillion in cash. The children were rounded up at gunpoint, whereupon the House Speaker informed negotiators that one child would die every hour unless their demands were met. Here now, a brief video one of the students was able to send out from inside the Capitol.
Nobody move, you're all gonna die! This kid's got a phone.
Historians across the country politely reminded Americans this week to quickly check and see what has happened in the past before making any big decisions.
Just take any book with history in it and then quickly skim through it to see what decisions in the past turned out to be bad. And then once you've pinpointed them, simply don't make those same decisions again. Because if a bad thing happened again, you see, that would be very bad indeed, wouldn't it?
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here. You're invited. If you want to join us, the number is 603-283-6160. Coming up, the FBI targeting American safe deposit boxes, not at a bank, but at a private company. This happened over a year ago.
Competing with the banks. Don't they know that's a crime?
Yep, and they're getting punished for it, even without any criminal charges being brought against people who had their property seized. We'll talk about that on the way.
That's the case where they've already ruled it was illegal.
Did they rule that about
They
this?
ruled. The judge said it was illegal what they did. The what is it? The raid. They basically did not comply with the order that authorized the search in the first place.
Really?
And all those boxes they searched illegally.
Have they given any of the stuff back?
What if people started hiring criminals to protect them from the government?
That's a good question.
It makes more sense. The criminals are much less destructive, and they don't expect to have, like, private jets and all.
You got an updated story on that, right?
We're going to get into that here, but first we do have Olivia on the line. Plus, you and I were going to get into the library thing because you were there at the library hearing last week, and I don't think we got into it last week at the Federal Court Gang Church building. We go first to Olivia in Arizona, though. You're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, I called about Leonard Peltier, but really quick, I wanted to say congratulations to avoiding jail time and best of luck to Ian and Aria on their case.
I think it's more accurate to say congratulations on avoiding more jail time.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
I didn't avoid all of it.
Technically, he was sentenced to what they call time served, which was nearly 6 months.
Which is kind of humorous considering that the judge says it was illegal.
He said that, but he also defended the magistrate who sentenced nobody.
He did. But he also admitted that it was illegal. He was illegally detained.
Yep. All right. So what was on your mind?
My one concern is that now that you have like a felony on your record, it'll be easier for them to cause more trouble. The feds to come and make more trouble later and say, "Look, this guy's a felon.
They can do that.
Dangerous."
Yeah. Well, and they did that this time because I already had a felony for selling weed. I'm a bad man
who's never harmed another person.
Yeah.
But
I've engaged in voluntary transactions that arbitrary people who weren't minding their own damn business didn't like.
Oh, yeah, it's worth pointing out right now the very same federal government gang is offering to trade an alleged arms dealer, a Russian arms dealer, for a WNBA player who the Russians caught with cannabis oil. So the Russians arrested a girl who was trying to come into Russia with cannabis oil. She's facing a decade behind bars in Russia for this. And the U.S. federal government has offered to give up the guy that they made a movie about called Lord of War. Nicolas Cage played somebody that was based apparently on this character who was an alleged, arms trafficker. They're going to give that person up if Russia agrees to the trade in order to get a WNBA star back to try to prevent her from going to Russian prison for something that they put tens of thousands of Americans into federal prison cages every single year here in the United States.
I think it's closer to 300,000.
Is it that many of them? Because I think there's only 200,000 federal prisoners. So I think you're probably thinking
I'm probably
state
thinking state
as well.
and federal.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the feds directly because it's just ridiculous hypocrisy that is going on here.
When we do it, it's fine, but when Russia does it, it's horrible. Well, I mean, the same thing with Iraq and the Ukraine. What makes the Ukraine a more egregious invasion than Iraq was? Why isn't George Bush in prison? Why isn't he under sanctions? Why hasn't somebody just clubbed him one?
Why didn't McDonald's pull out of the United States? Close all their stores.
It's so weird that they're trading prisoners like that. Like somebody doesn't.
They're trying to. Yeah, the deal hasn't been struck.
I understand, but it's just like they're trading prisoners. Like it's not even like they're trading spies.
Russia would want this guy for, though. I mean, is it they want him so they can put him in prison, or is it?
I don't know the whole story behind him.
They want him to sell them some arms because the Chinese will do that all day.
I somehow doubt it. The guy was working, he's part of this system, I'm sure, and they
I don't
want
know
him
all
back.
the details. His name is Victor Bout. He's known as the Merchant of Death. I have a story about that too, but it wasn't in show prep for tonight.
Here's the thing: Russia is it's a mafia, but more of the type of gang that you think of that's like street gang or something of that nature than your typical government gang. It's
They're
very
more
bizarre
honest than most governments.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't try and hide what they are as carefully.
Bout is a former Soviet military officer, so he was one of them. He was one of the Soviets.
Yeah, go figure.
And currently serving a 25-year prison sentence on charges of conspiring to kill Americans, acquire and export anti-aircraft missiles, and provide material support to a terrorist organization. And Bout, by the way, has maintained he's innocent, but just presuming he is all of those things, presuming that he was legitimately found guilty and sentenced to 25 years behind bars, they're literally willing to trade a potential murderer or something in order to get a pot possessing person back into the United States and then let her free, supposedly, unless they're actually planning to charge her here in the United States for possession of marijuana oil, because they sure as hell aren't going to let anybody out of jail for that in the United States.
And the funny thing is she hates America.
Does she?
Yeah. She's got, I don't know if you've seen her, she's got the Russian commie stars tattooed on her.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
She was saying when she was playing that she didn't want the anthem played at games. Now none of this bothers me because I hate the United States government. I love the country.
Yeah,
I hate the government.
Maybe the U.S. government.
She's getting exactly what she wanted. She wanted to go live in a tyrannical state.
I wonder
what she wants. She gets. I don't like it any better than the rest of you men.
I wonder if the U.S. government wants her more than, for some political reason, more than they want the Lord of War guy.
Well, obviously.
Yeah.
But why?
Well, if they're going to make the trade, that's
I don't know.
implied.
It's a good question. I am curious as to why they want this person. Because I don't know if they want to.
She's probably related to a politician or something.
It could be that, or it could be that the government wants to persecute her or something else. It could be either or, right? I mean,
it could be.
Let's go to your calls here. Olivia's still on the line. Did you get to your point, Olivia? I'm not sure if you did.
I did not.
Okay, what were you calling about?
You guys are really good about bringing attention to Ross Ulbricht's case, But there's somebody I really wish you guys would cover, and that is Native American activist Leonard Peltier. He's, I believe, Lakota Sioux Indian. He was accused of shooting an FBI agent, but the whole trial was a complete travesty. They had inconsistencies all over the place. There were recanted witness statements. There were statements who were coerced into testifying. There were discrepancies in material evidence. So it's just a complete S show, if you know what I mean. And
yeah, I've heard the name associated with. Wasn't he a libertarian?
I don't know anything about the story.
It's always a travesty.
Wasn't he a libertarian or something?
Was he or are you thinking of Russell Means?
No, I know the difference.
Oh, he actually ran as vice president on the Peace and Freedom Party ticket, I think a couple of years ago, but he had to drop out for health reasons. He's 77. He's been in lockup since he was 30, and they're still holding this elderly man in for a crime he probably didn't commit. In fact, the two other people that they accused of shooting the FBI agents, they were acquitted and for self-defense. But for some reason, he was tried separately, and they gave him 2 life sentences. So and probably he was a target for the activism in the 1970s. You know, the Native Americans were doing a lot of activism to reclaim their land and other things. So it was probably a politically motivated trial and
they never do that.
I thank you for calling and sharing that story.
It sounds like such an old story.
I'd like to hear more about the story if you want to mail me a link.
It's such an old story. I haven't heard of it, but there's so many stories like this. This is the thing. These stories are not unique. They're probably
common.
Yeah, I mean they're common. It's like you can't cover them all even if you wanted to, especially not old stories.
And that's another reason why a lot of people take the plea. And thank you, Olivia, for the call tonight, because the system is incredibly corrupt. If you watch the Ross Ulbricht trial or read about it, because you had to be there to watch it, they didn't allow the defense to basically even put on a defense. They blocked their potential defense at every single turn with a corrupt judge and corrupt police agents who later went to prison. But Ross is still in prison for 2 life sentences plus 40 years. More coming up.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight in the studio, it's Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
And join us online over at freetalklive.com. By the way, I want to say thank you to Jesse, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS Patreon. You can join Jesse over there for as little as $5 a month over at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com, and you can sign up there with your debit card, credit card, your PayPal account. You can help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live and help us get the ideas of liberty onto more great radio stations. So again, thanks, Jesse, for doing that. We're going to go back to more of your calls and thoughts. Then the FBI is trying to apparently cover up what happened with their raid against a private safe deposit box company in California last year.
I'm shocked to find out there's gambling going on in here. You're winning, sir. Oh, thank you very much.
Reason's got that story. We'll get to it coming up here, but Major Payne is on the line first. Go ahead, Major.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to give you a call back about that basketball girl that got hijacked over there in Russia.
Yeah.
She had evidently been over there about 6 months playing on some Russian league and was coming home to start her season here. And my question is...
I think you have it backwards, so I did look it up, Major. We'll get to your question here in a moment, but just to clarify, at least according to the Reuters report on this, she was on her way to join her Russian team. So she had been to Russia previously, but in this case, she had spent time at home in the United States. So that was how it was that she easily had access to the cannabis oil according to her, Oopsie mistakenly put it in her bag. She later claimed that she was confused, recovering from COVID, the stress of packing, making sure I had my COVID tests, jet lag. She said, if I had to speculate, if I had to guess on how they ended up in my bags, I was in a rush. And so she's claiming she had no intention to violate the Russian laws, but usually that doesn't matter whether or not you intended to violate the law.
It's amazing how
the tyrant has an excuse. The tyrant has an excuse.
Yeah.
It's amazing, how often they exclude intent from the law.
Yeah. Yep. So
there's supposed to be an element, like I forget what the
mens rea.
Yeah, exactly. The
criminal intent, right?
Yeah, it's like supposed to be part of the law, but so often it's not.
All right. So what was the thing you wanted to say besides that, Major?
The other thing they like to throw around is ignorance is no excuse of the law. I didn't know it was illegal. That don't matter either.
Right, yeah, you're
But,
supposed to read the entirety of all Russian law before you go and visit Russia and every other country in the world, right? You need to read...
Well, I would rather read the entirety of Russian law than go to Russia.
Well, like I said, I thought she got hemmed up on the way out, so my thought was, what country searches you when you get on the plane? You always get searched when you reach your place of destination, you know?
No, if you're traveling internationally, you will get searched before you get on the plane to leave your country, because you have to go through TSA in the United States, and then when you get to where you're going, customs will search you. So you will be searched at multiple points.
It's customary.
It can happen at least, yeah.
Is there a country that won't search you when you get there?
Yeah.
If so, which one? Because that sounds like a good one to visit.
Well, I don't know. I wasn't searched when I went.
The Bahamas ever.
I went through customs, but I wasn't searched.
They didn't X-ray your bag. They didn't.
That's a good question. I didn't have any baggage. It was all carry on, but no, they didn't search.
Wow. They let you walk into Europe with no search at customs?
I did not have to go through. I mean, I had to go through customs, but not to.
But they didn't open your backpack?
Right.
Most places you fill out a little form, as I recall, that says, do you have anything to declare? But then you can get diverted into the search if they feel like it or if they think you're pretty.
Well, she got searched, and they found some weed. What else, Major?
She is kind of pretty.
But the other thing I was wondering is, if this trade does go down, with her and this other guy that they're trying to train for this Russian arms dealer. Evidently, this Russian arms dealer was big time. He was trying to sell. They caught him in a sting. I think he had 800 or 8,000 surface-to-air missiles, 400 pounds C4. I mean,
wow.
This dude's no joke. He supplies armies.
Allegedly,
and, they're cutting him loose. They're cutting him loose for a pothead. That's really don't.
That's crazy. But that's what the offer is. Now, again, Russia has, from what I understand, not yet agreed to the offer. But I mean, why wouldn't they? Right? Like, it's actually a pretty good offer. And there's apparently another character they want.
I don't know what use they have for the guy, but.
Well, what use do they have for a girl for marijuana?
Yeah,
conviction?
right.
She's pretty.
Evidently, there was 3 years spent catching this guy and across 3 different continents, so they spent a whole lot of money to put him in the can just to let him out.
Just to give him away after
it definitely
years.
Seems like Russia has the better deal here, assuming that this guy is part of the club, you know?
Thanks, Major. Thanks for the call tonight, man. I appreciate hearing from you. The number is 603-283-6160. Regarding this Brittany Grenier person, I saw the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire account on Twitter made an interesting post yesterday. Apparently, this person, this Brittany Grenier, is now featured on the cover of Time magazine.
Are you serious?
Get this headline: Brittany Grenier and the Fight for Freedom.
See, there's a lesson to be learned here. If you're going to get arrested for drugs, do it in another country, because then somebody will give a damn. But if you get arrested here for drugs, nobody cares.
You're just a statistic.
The tyrants are just as bad.
Yep. Their quote here is, portraying Grenier as a freedom fighter is so wild. She's in jail for the same thing hundreds of thousands of Americans are in jail for. And here's the thing. She's not a freedom fighter. She's not
a basketball player.
Well, if she were to say, yeah, I smoke weed, what about it? Go ahead. Let's have this trial. I'm not going to, not pleading guilty. But no, she's got her tail between her legs saying, oh, I'm so sorry. I just made an innocent mistake. This was a total whoopsie. And
you're not even saying not saying she should be in prison.
No,
you're
I'm
simply
not.
saying that she's not a freedom fighter.
No, she's not. She's just a coward.
And if the United States government wanted to have a modicum of credibility, it would cut loose every single drug prisoner in America.
Absolutely.
Before it worried about the people worry about the people that you're oppressing before you worry about the people that other people are oppressing.
This is a slap in the face to everybody who has ever been, or currently behind bars for cannabis in the United States.
And these people have been waging a genocide against us for a century. And it is literally a genocide genocide. John Ehrlichmeier, who was Richard Nixon's chief of staff, and apparently he learned honesty when he was in prison, because when he came out, he talked a little bit about why the drug war was ramped up under Nixon. It didn't start under Nixon. It's been going on for a century, but they ramped it up. Well, why? Because he hated hippies and he hated black people.
That's it.
Okay.
What it came down to.
So he wanted to destroy two cultures. And that's the definition of genocide.
Yep. But they have no shortage of deadly level hypocrisy, and they are not going to let a single person out in order for, to prove any kind of consistency or morality, because they don't have it. They don't have any morality. They're an evil organization that ruins people's lives. That's what the federal government does. There's more coming up here. You can join us. Again, I don't think this girl should go to prison at all. I think she should be free just like every other cannabis user. More coming up.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with AgristHosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to AgristHosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's AgristHosting.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The United Nations says there's been no let-up in attacks on Ukrainian civilians, but there is hope that grain shipments will soon begin after last week's UN-brokered deal was signed by Russia and Ukraine. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
Addressing a Security Council meeting, the UN Under-Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, said the recently brokered grain deal was a beacon of hope. It's believed the first shipment of grain could leave Ukraine on Friday, after key details are worked out. While there's optimism over the impact that'll have on global food prices, UN member states again traded accusations during the Security Council meeting. The US said Russia had set fire to the UN Charter and carried out war crimes in Ukraine. Moscow's representative at the UN said Western arms sent to Kiev are being used to kill children in the east of the country. William Denzelo, New York.
The governor of the American state of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency after at least 16 people died in flash floods caused by heavy rains. Governor Andy Beshear says he fears the death toll will rise. A Conservative member of the US Supreme Court has mocked world leaders, including Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry, after they condemned his controversial ruling last month overturning abortion rights in America. Speaking at a conference in Rome, Justice Samuel Alito brushed off criticism from several prominent figures, as FSN's Washington correspondent Benji Haya reports.
Samuel Alito, the man responsible for drafting the ruling rolling back the constitutional right to an abortion, said that he had the honour of writing
the only Supreme Court decision in the history of that institution that has been lambasted by a whole string of foreign leaders.
Amongst those referenced, French President Emmanuel Macron, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry.
The Duke of Sussex addressed the United Nations and seemed to compare the decision with the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Mr. Alito, a Catholic, added in his address that religious liberty was under attack in many places. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that the justice's politicised remarks should be alarming to voters. Benji Haya, Washington, D.C.
Inflation in the Eurozone soared again to 8.9% in July, according to flash estimates from the EU's statistics agency. It's a new record for the 19 countries that use the euro currency. And Sir Christopher Meyer, a former British ambassador to the United States, has died at the age of 78. He served in Washington during the administrations of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and suffered a stroke while holidaying in the French Alps. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. And bring up whatever you want. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
We were talking a little bit about the federal government gang and how they've been just trying to shoehorn cryptocurrency under regulations that in many cases have been around for multiple decades that had no intention to regulate cryptocurrency because, well, it didn't exist at the time of those regulatory creations. But that doesn't stop the agencies from continuing to expand their interpretation of what the code says. And ultimately, they get away with it until somebody challenges them, until somebody says, no, I'm not going to just take a guilty plea. No, I'm not going to just agree with your interpretation. That's what's happening in the LBRY case, where LBRY, which is a media sharing protocol that's a blockchain-oriented system that we've been using for years here on Free Talk Live. You can follow our channel on their Odyssey platform over at video.freetalklive.com, where we stream live there every single night. But LBRY is the protocol that is the sort of the basis for that platform. And it's a really cool thing, and you ought to check it out. In fact, if you want to really help the network out, you should get the LBRY desktop software, and you can actually run a node and help support every video that you watch. You ultimately seed those videos, kind of like torrents, but with essentially a blockchain-based directory, if you will. That's kind of one of the key differences between torrents and LBRY. Anyway, go to lbry.com to learn more about them. But a few years back, the SEC started sniffing around the LBRY people. We know the SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission, has been going after Ripple. They've gone after other crypto projects that I can't name because I don't know of those cases. But we know the folks, some of them involved with LBRY. One of them is Jeremy Kauffman, who's a Free State Project board member at this time. He's also running for U.S. Senate as a Libertarian candidate here in New Hampshire, and I believe they've completed their petitioning process and racked up about 5,800 petitions.
And they need about 5.
They
right?
need 3,000.
Oh, 3.
1,500 from the 2 congressional districts, so 3,000 across the state, and they have to be valid. So that's why you want to shoot for double. You want to try to get double the required number because they're going to try to kick out as many as they can and disqualify them. So we're hoping that they've got 3,000 valid, but they still have to take them to all the towns in New Hampshire, which is a huge process. You don't just get to turn them in at Concord. You have to, if there's 200 towns that you got signatures in, you literally have to go to 200 town clerks. It's the most difficult.
Are there 200 towns in
There's
New
more
Hampshire?
than 200. It's like 210 or something, I think.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know if that includes the cities as well, but it's something like that. Now, I don't know if they got them from 200 towns, but if it's 150 towns, then you got to go to 150 town clerks and take them all the petitions from that one town, and then those clerks have to then certify which petitions are valid and which aren't. I don't know if I don't know if you then have to go and pick them up from the 150 towns. You probably do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. So
I actually did that one year for. They brought in a guy from Libertarian Party National one year because we were having a hard time, and I worked for him for a while. And
then what do you do with the ones that you pick up? Do you then send them to the central?
They go to
state?
the state house.
What a pain!
Here's the question. Is this because Jeremy is running as a libertarian?
Correct. Any third party. This is a third party process.
Right.
Yeah.
Republican.
Don't even think of saying that the 2020 election wasn't rigged. It was rigged.
Oh yeah. So if he were to run as a Republican or a Democrat, he'd probably have to spend $100, sign a piece of paper at the state house, and he's done.
Wow.
That's it. So it's way more difficult for third parties.
Talk about the system being set up to ensure that only select people win.
Correct.
Well, that's why it's so important to infiltrate and as much as you can, destroy the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. They've given themselves a monopoly, and so the only thing to do is turn it down.
Duopoly, but yeah, for sure.
Well,
and I see why you're saying monopoly, because the Democrats and the Republicans are one and the same.
They say the right wing and left wing, but it's the same damn bird.
Yeah, you're right.
So anyway, that's who Jeremy Kauffman is. He's got some really creative campaign ads, by the way, so check him out.
Oh, he does. He really
looked
does.
him up. He's really, really entertaining stuff. They are really just having fun with this campaign, and I love the attitude of it. I love the attitude of don't care about the system, want to make fun of the system from inside of the system, and just take everything at the system's expense, and that's what they're doing. And so kudos to them. I'm a big fan. But he's also the president of LBRY, the company that creates the LBRY software. If the LBRY Corporation were wiped off the map tomorrow, LBRY presumably would continue because it's an open source project. And
that is correct.
And so there's no stopping LBRY, we don't believe. But that doesn't mean they're not going to defend what they do, and they are. They've spent millions of dollars on attorneys' fees and whatever else, experts, etc., trying to defend against the SEC, bringing not criminal charges, but a civil case against LBRY. And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Chris, because you were actually at the hearing, the SEC is basically saying to LBRY, your token, the LBRY credits, as they're called, LBC, which is what essentially is the fuel for the system, meaning that whenever you, if you have a LBRY account, you want to post a video or because you don't have to just use it for video, you could put audio up there, you could put a PDF up there if you want to, whatever media you want to post, you have to pay a very, very small, like a fraction of a LBRY credit in order to post the thing you want to post, because you're interacting with a blockchain. You're putting information on a blockchain, and there's always some sort of small fee in order to do that. So it's essentially the gas that makes the system run. If you don't have LBRY credits, you can't post anything, and it's easy to get them. I think they give you some for free when you sign up for the site or whatever. But the SEC is claiming the LBRY credits are what they call a security. What the SEC is claiming is a security. And
even though it has none of the characteristics of a security.
Well, what is a security?
We looked up the characteristics one night, and I can't quote them off the top of my head.
I never can either.
I'd like to.
And it's kind of bizarre because they were saying effectively because it goes up in value, it's a security. But that's not necessarily the case, because you can have other assets that go up in value but aren't securities.
Yeah, commodities.
Right.
Your house is security?
Exactly. And that's basically what they're, and that's sort of what they're arguing is it's a commodity, not a security.
Well, the SEC is arguing it's a security. You're saying LBRY is arguing it's a commodity.
Correct.
Okay. According to Investopedia.com, they say here that securities are a fungible, negotiable financial instrument that holds some type of monetary value, representing an ownership position in a publicly traded corporation via stock, or a creditor relationship with a governmental body, or a corporation represented by owning that entity's bond, or rights to ownership as represented by an option. These are not ownership.
Coin is none of those things.
Right. Yeah. So but people have to understand is there is a LBRY, like the blockchain.
There's the protocol, the blockchain,
protocol, right? And there's a foundation, and then there's also LBRY, the company.
Mm-hmm.
Owning, you could potentially own stock in LBRY, the company.
If it's available for sale.
If it's available for sale.
Private.
It's not.
Yeah.
But anyway, there are actual owners of LBRY.
Correct.
Okay? But the people who have these tokens are not in any way getting anything other than the only thing they're able to use them for
service
is to purchase. Yeah, basically
right.
to use LBRY, the blockchain sort
Correct.
of.
You can post videos. You can send the credits to, let's say you've got you're a fan of a particular channel and you really like the work that they do. You can send them a donation.
Yeah.
So it's an internal
So if Hunter
currency.
Biden were doing this, then they'd say, oh, well, this is just a coupon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is like a movie ticket. You pay for the ticket and then you redeem the ticket later. That's not a security.
Or you can give the ticket to your friend and then they could go to the
But
movie.
of course, it's not Hunter Biden doing it.
Right. Yeah, it's clearly like, it seems pretty clear on its face that this is not a security,
right.
But that doesn't matter to the SEC because they are going to keep pushing forward with this until they lose, and they will spend all the taxpayer money that they want to try to make their case. Meanwhile, LBRY is going, they're not bankrupt at this point, but they've spent millions of dollars, so God knows how much they have left at this point.
And basically, they don't want anything developed. They don't want new technology to come into existence that is not controlled by them or one of their cronies.
Like YouTube.
They want every single opportunity monopolized. It's the just us system.
Yes, and that's what you're really pointing out is what this is really about. Of course, they're not saying that publicly, but that's what's going on here.
But nobody tells the truth.
Indeed. The number is 603-283-6160. So that's going to take us up to what actually happened last week, Chris, with the library having a court hearing in front of the very same court that we were just in yesterday, except
different
civil
judge.
side and a different judge. More coming up here in moments. It's Free Talk Live.
When is the best time to buy wrapping paper? December 26. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Have you seen how much frozen turkeys are marked down the day after Thanksgiving? Beef and turkey are both rich in protein, vitamins, and minerals, but beef has twice the fats. So why gobble just one day each year? Those day after Thanksgiving doorbuster specials can be budget busters, but everything is on sale in January. And try Christmas shopping throughout the year when you spot something someone on your gift list would appreciate. And though I love the smell of a real Christmas tree, I bought a handsome $1,000 artificial tree for $400 in January. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open here, and you can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you're ready to start learning about cryptocurrency, just head over to Bitcoin.com and click Get Started at the top of the page there. And you get to some introductory videos about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and you'll learn some of the basics about why decentralization matters, why fiat money is on the way out, and cryptocurrency is on the way in. You can go to, again, Bitcoin.com. Click Get Started. Good time to start learning about it. It's jumped up a little bit in the last few days. Bitcoin had been as low as $18,000, $19,000, $20,000 for a few weeks here. And in the last 24 hours, it has eclipsed 24,000. It's right now just below 24,000 for one Bitcoin.
It's a couple $1,000 higher than the other day.
Yeah, so it's up a little bit. Up 10% basically in the last few days. So, but I remember, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. You can buy a Bitcoin Cash or a fraction of a Bitcoin Cash. You decide how much that you want to put into something like this. And of course, don't take a risk beyond what you can afford to lose, because there is risk involved. But that said, over the years, cryptocurrency has trended upwards over time. So zoom out. Whenever somebody on the media is saying, Bitcoin, huge crash, it's over, just zoom out and look at a chart that goes from, let's say, 2013 or 2012, the last 10 years, and see what the price looks like. That'll give you some perspective.
It's hard to. I don't like to recommend cryptocurrency. I don't feel like people should be investing in it. I feel like people should be buying it because they're going to use it.
Well, yeah,
but that doesn't change the fact that it's been like one of the best investments, and I put that in quotes.
Yeah, in the last decade.
But if you're going to buy it, right, this is a good time. Like
Probably.
Probably.
I mean, it could go down
Probably.
Again,
Probably.
But that's why you shouldn't, in my opinion, I'm not a financial advisor, but my personal opinion is that if you're interested, just get on the dollar cost average plan. Buy a little bit here, buy a little bit there, buy a little bit
I'll buy into that plan.
Yeah, I think that's a good one if you're interested in it. And like you said, Chris, if you can earn it, that's even better. If you can accept it at your business and you have customers that are willing to pay for it, that's one of the best ways to do it. Earning crypto is the best way to get it, for sure.
And Self411/copblock.app suddenly takes crypto.
Again? Really?
All right, good.
What's the easiest? Awesome.
What's the easiest way for people to donate to that project?
The easiest way is probably actually going to be to wait until I get a page up on the net, because I need to I need to make some QR codes. And
all right, when you do that, or whenever you decide how you want to do it, let's get it onto the Self 411 website, the official one, which is getself411.com. We can put a donation page up there, pretty easy. So that shouldn't be a problem. All right, so we are talking about LBRY, which is the media sharing protocol. It's cryptocurrency oriented, focused. The SEC is calling it a security. They're calling the LBRY coin a security, and LBRY has spent millions of dollars so far, and it hasn't even gone to trial yet to defend its system and its token. And Chris, you were in court watching the motion for a summary judgment, which, as I understand it, is basically going to a judge and saying, these people haven't proved their case, you should kick it out of court, or you should judge in our favor and just call this a day rather than going to trial.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of summary judgment.
So, yeah, that is. That's a summary judgment. It was interesting. They were so what they agree on, I guess. I feel like we have to kind of talk about what they agree on. They agree that on the facts of the case.
Mm-hmm. So they're stipulating,
right,
as they call it.
So it will never see a jury, basically. I mean, I don't know why that. Well, I guess the explanation is you don't get to have a jury unless there are disagreements over the facts of a case. So that means it's going to ultimately, if it goes to trial, it's going to be heard by a judge, because a judge gets to decide the law effectively,
right,
when there is a dispute over what the law is or means. So
note that this is civil. In criminal court, you can have a jury trial even if you stipulate the facts.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that's a bit. I did not know
for the weed, because I stipulated everything and went for jury nullification, didn't win.
And I wonder if there's any difference between federal and state, because there could be.
Well, the right to a jury trial is supposedly enshrined in the federal constitution, but they don't pay any attention to that. They're not supposed to be able to take more than $20 from you without a jury.
Yep, that's right.
The 7th or 8th Amendment.
It's in there.
Yeah,
like that. Yeah.
That suits at common law is what that's limited.
All right. So what else?
Anyway,
so they stipulated to the facts, which are what?
Basically, I don't know. I mean,
that library has a token, that they have a platform.
Right. There is a token. They did sell.
A network.
They did sell tokens.
But they didn't promise ownership.
They did not promise ownership.
They didn't sell the token saying you would have a right to vote on how library operates.
The prosecutor did try to argue that at least one. There was at least one email where a employee said it would go up in value. Now, that doesn't make it a security.
No.
But that's what they're effectively trying to argue.
Wow.
So
one employee.
Yes, even though they have not actually advertised
I wonder if he was working for the feds
as, being any kind of security or an investment in library.
Right.
That's what they are sort of they've tried to argue in court, and they were basically, a lot of it was the judge going back and forth asking questions about what is a security, and does this is this a security? And it's a big question mark. There's a bunch of cases, and none of the cases fit this specific situation.
So this is a original case.
It's an original case.
Unique case.
It's a unique case. And it's not clear. And the thing is, in the federal courts at the lower level, judges don't decide law really. They rule based on prior court rulings by
precedent.
Yeah, precedent. Right.
Right.
So this judge is in a very tough place because he has no clear precedent on this.
Somebody needs to assassinate the precedent.
And
PRECEDENT, just for anyone out there listening, our federal agent.
Yes, if you're a little bit deaf.
It's a pun.
Yes. So yeah, it's
upon us now.
It's a great shirt, by the way. Somebody put that onto a T-shirt a few years ago. I don't know if you've seen it. Seen those shirts.
I haven't.
It's a good one. Yeah.
It is a very I think technical argument, and it's kind of hard to follow, even if you kind of understand the language a little bit. I understood the language a little bit, enough to follow it.
And when you say the language, you're a programmer. You're talking about financial language.
Yes, the financial language,
the language of securities.
Yeah,
okay.
And of course the legalese.
I am not. I will not say that I am in any way an expert on this. Okay. However, I've at least read a lot of financial legalese in terms of court documents and things like that because of crypto and I'm trying to think IRS and just different pieces of like, for example, there was I'm trying to think, I think it was it the IRS that made maybe it was SEC, I forgot, it might have been more than one, but they basically made sort of their interpretation of the law, and then they provided guidelines on cryptocurrencies, right? So I went and I read through a bunch of that, and now mind you, they said one thing and then they gave you an example, and what they said didn't match the example, but anyway, so and this is the thing, different lawyers will have different opinions on things.
Yes, that is the point of law. It's just an opinion, basically.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the government, it's an opinion backed by a gun.
Right. And so we don't know. You've got sort of three sets of lawyers. You've got the judge, presumably he's got a law degree, but I technically don't know. And you've got the prosecutor, who also presumably has a law degree, probably required. And you've got the defense, which I don't think you can avoid having a law degree when you in the federal court level.
I think you're right.
So you've basically got three sets of lawyers, and now it's going to be up to these two sets of lawyers. The defense and the prosecution. I don't know if they call them the prosecutor.
Plaintiff, I think is the word in a civil
plaintiff,
civil trial.
Which is kind of weird because it's still the federal government. But anyway, the plaintiff and i.e. sort of prosecutor and the defense have to now argue it out in court and cite different pieces of precedent. And then the judge, in theory, has to make a decision as to what he thinks the law is, but without a clear precedent. It sounds like it's likely to get appealed, regardless of how he rules.
Yeah, good chance
because
the feds have no skin off their back to appeal. Again, it's not them paying for it; it's the taxpayers that pay for it, so they'll go all as far as they want to go.
So if your grandma loses her home because of taxes, you know why.
The number is
wasting your money.
603-283-6160. And as Library will point out, this is because it's such a pivotal case. If the SEC prevails in this, it could mean they could go after any cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
For the same BS.
Right.
There's more coming up here. You can join us and take control of the airwaves. Hour 3 is next. It is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The United Nations says there's been no let-up in attacks on Ukrainian civilians, but there is hope that grain shipments will soon begin after last week's UN-brokered deal was signed by Russia and Ukraine. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
Addressing a Security Council meeting, the UN Under-Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, said the recently brokered grain deal was a beacon of hope. It's believed the first shipment of grain could leave Ukraine on Friday, after key details are worked out. While there's optimism over the impact that'll have on global food prices, UN member states again traded accusations during the Security Council meeting. The US said Russia had set fire to the UN Charter and carried out war crimes in Ukraine. Moscow's representative at the UN said Western arms sent to Kiev are being used to kill children in the east of the country. William Denzelo, New York.
The governor of the American state of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency after at least 16 people died in flash floods caused by heavy rains. Governor Andy Beshear says he fears the death toll will rise. A conservative member of the US Supreme Court has mocked world leaders, including Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry, after they condemned his controversial ruling last month overturning abortion rights in America. Speaking at a conference in Rome, Justice Samuel Alito brushed off criticism from several prominent figures, as FSN's Washington correspondent Benji Hire reports.
Samuel Alito, the man responsible for drafting the ruling rolling back the constitutional right to an abortion, said that he had the honour of writing
the only Supreme Court decision in the history of that institution that has been lambasted by a whole string of foreign leaders.
Amongst those referenced, French President Emmanuel Macron, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry.
The Duke of Sussex addressed the United Nations and seemed to compare the decision with the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Mr. Alito, a Catholic, added in his address that religious liberty was under attack in many places. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that the justice's politicized remarks should be alarming to voters. Benji Hire, Washington, D.C.
Inflation in the Eurozone soared again to 8.9% in July, according to flash estimates from the EU's statistics agency. It's a new record for the 19 countries that use the euro currency. And Sir Christopher Meyer, a former British ambassador to the United States, has died at the age of 78. He served in Washington during the administrations of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and suffered a stroke while holidaying in the French Alps. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, remembering Bernard Cribbins, the great British character actor, died yesterday at the age of 93. In a career spanning 75 years, every generation will associate him with a different role, whether it's reading stories to children on the BBC's Jackanory, voicing up the Wombles, appearing in Fawlty Towers, or in latter years playing a beloved grandfather on Doctor Who. He was a quintessential British star adored by people the world over. In 1970, he played the role of Albert Perks, the station manager in The Railway Children, and on the film's 40th anniversary, he discussed the role in an appearance at the UK's National Media Museum.
It didn't feel to me that it was going to be historical, which it seems to be now. It was just, for me, a very nice job, working with old friends and, people I respected. And from that point of view, it was great. It was a lovely story, and the result, as we know, is terrific. But the applause and the adulation has gone on for 40 years. People who saw it when they were children, perhaps, talk about it still, and people who are revisiting it on television come and say how much they'd enjoyed it,
Yeah.
It's lasted. It's got a hell of a good long life.
And so did Bernard Cribbins, who never thought of retiring. Just weeks ago, he was filming some fresh scenes for Doctor Who. The main news again. The United Nations warns there's been no let-up in Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians, despite a deal signed by the two countries that are supposed to allow grain shipments to resume from Ukraine. Eurozone inflation soared again to 8.9% in July, according to the EU Statistics Agency, and a former British ambassador to the US, Sir Christopher Meyer, has died at the age of 78. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story, and that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
A local man feels even lazier when he thinks about how much ISIS has accomplished this year. A police officer doesn't see a difference between black and light-skinned black suspects. And a weak-willed termite eats a whole log in one sitting. Barreling forward on our campaign towards truth and righteousness, this is the Onion Week in Review. A new report released this week revealed that more parents than ever are relying on grandparents to help up their kids. The report's authors noted that in order to make ends meet, many budget-conscious parents in the U.S. have allowed their own parents to step in and deliver the same level of emotional neglect they would like to apply, adding that for many working adults, this arrangement was the only way to ensure their children were adequately belittled and ignored. In other news, Busch Gardens unveils their new 9,600-mile-long endurance coaster. A documentary provides a scathing indictment of the director's filmmaking skills, and a man brings his son into the office to see where dad is emasculated.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the third hour of the program, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio tonight, it's Ian,
Nobody, and Chris.
Phones are open for you. We're talking about the library situation, lbry.com, the open source media sharing protocol that is worth looking into. If you're interested in internet freedoms and open source projects worth your time, this is definitely one of them. You ought to check it out. You know it's worth your time because the federal government is trying to stop it. They're pulling out all the stops with a major attack by the Securities and Exchange Commission, costing library millions of dollars just to hire lawyers to defend them in federal court. Chris, you were just kind of giving us a rundown of what you experienced last week in front of the civil court there, where Library, the company that's sort of creating Library, but they don't own it because it's just an open source project, that they're being attacked. They're being accused of being a security, or the library token that is the sort of the fuel, the token that operates the system. They're claiming, the SEC's claiming that's a security, and library's saying no, it's not. It's just a utility token. It's useful. It's a thing that you use to buy things on the platform.
It was kind of interesting because the judge was kind of going back and forth and trying to understand it, because there's effectively, the judge is assuming that a startup has a business model, and he's trying to understand the value in Library, the company, versus Library, the credits. And, here's the thing. So Library doesn't necessarily, like any startup, they don't necessarily have value sort of being generated yet. Or a business model for that matter. However,
well, they're definitely generating value,
or even a plan,
because people are able to go on the internet and use their platform to look at videos,
and more people are doing it.
He's talking about an investor value.
Oh, yeah, I don't see what that would be.
Yeah.
So, and here's the thing.
Because Odyssey's separate, by the way, just to be clear.
Right.
We talk a lot about the Odyssey platform,
which runs on Library.
Odyssey was created sort of by Library, but then they spun it off into its own company, and so it's not even...
Also kind of confusing, because there's Library, the foundation, and Library, the company.
The company, yeah.
So that's also making it very confusing.
Right.
So...
And who was sued?
That's normal. Was it the NRA's same way?
Was it the foundation or the company that got sued?
The foundation put in a friend of the court brief.
They tried to join
or something
it, right?
like that.
They motioned to intervene,
and it was denied, which wasn't really too surprising to me anyway. Yeah. I forget why, the technical details of why that is, but I've seen other cases like that in more piracy sort of type cases, but involving copyright, but peer-to-peer type stuff. But anyway.
So what else do we need to know about this case? You said they agreed on the facts of the case. So this is really just going to come down to a question of whether or not the law will apply. Which is to say, does this token pass the quote-unquote Howey test, I believe is one of the tests for whether or not, if it passes this test, then it's a security. If it doesn't pass...
that's the part that's not clear at all. Because it doesn't match up perfectly. That's one of the tests it doesn't match up perfectly with.
That's because securities law wasn't designed to deal with cryptocurrencies.
It basically it doesn't let's see, how do I say this? It doesn't fall afoul of like any of this, any of these tests, because it's not. It's something different. It's something unique. It's something new. But basically, I think I kind of want to talk about the business model. The business model is sort of the thing that is like the judges going on and thinking about, whether or not it's a security. And it's interesting because he was assuming sort of that, like, you at least, even if a business isn't making any money yet, you have some sort of business model. But that's actually not the case in the tech world. In the tech world, often the business models aren't figured out until you have a large user base. So, and I wish I was the lawyer, because I would have, for the defense, because I would have been like, well, hold on, judge. What you don't understand is that, yes, the company, right, its only objective in the early stages of a startup is to, in this type of startup, is to generate users. So here the lawyer's talking about how, they're trying to increase users, but he's not really making clear that, no, there isn't a business model yet, but there are business models that will likely be applied down the road, even though they haven't picked one yet. And the example of this
Twitter
is,
still doesn't have a business model.
Exactly. But
and it's been more than a decade.
Except shilling for the feds.
Typically, Library or a business like Library would likely have things, the business models they would likely use are things like advertising, for example, on Odyssey. Okay. So they would sell advertising, right? That's likely. And the lawyer did eventually say that. But here's the thing. It's not something, it sounded like he hadn't actually talked to his client about that. Because, like, why would you, right? What does their business model have to do with anything? And so eventually, I don't know if it was Jeremy or it was the other gentleman with him, but one of them did say something to the lawyer, kind of snuck up and said something to the lawyer. And the lawyer eventually did say advertising and I think something else, right? But it was sort of like, it was kind of weird because it was like, there was a long conversation about this. And it was only like a few minutes later that was, it was stated that is their business model or would be their business model at some point in the future. From the sounds of it, there is no advertising yet, but that is sort of the talk. But it's also kind of interesting because
they're doing that on Odyssey. Why
should you be forced to reveal what your future business model is?
That's not good.
Right. Like that seems like your secret sauce, potentially. And here, because they're being put forth before the court in public, in a public trial or hearing, I guess, they're being forced to reveal in order for this judge to understand like why it isn't a security. Anyway, so that was the gist, a good portion of the gist of what was going on in that.
So case. The judge had said that it could be another month or two before he makes a ruling.
It's 60 days, I believe it was specifically.
And he will either basically rule in one side's favor or the other, or it could go to a full trial later on. It's one way or the other.
Yeah, so he'll have to rule as to whether or not to throw this out or not. Yeah. And if it doesn't get thrown out, then it's going to go to trial, it sounds like. So.
Yep. And we'll keep an eye on it as this develops because, again, this is a big case. If they rule in favor of the SEC, it would be a simple matter for them to go after any single cryptocurrency out there that is based in the United States, basically. Yeah. Any corporation that created something inside the U.S., whether or not they have control over it, like Library Corporation cannot control the library tokens.
Yep. This was there. Also, to be clear, for those who haven't really been following this because it hasn't really been that public, this was the first hearing, the public hearing
ever
on this.
Oh,
ever.
Wow.
So
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So
it's all just been motions prior to this. Okay.
Yeah. This is the first public hearing that anybody could attend, and there was a small but good turnout of maybe half a dozen people.
Not bad.
So
we can do better.
Considering that it wasn't advertised at all, basically, that's not bad. So yeah.
We'll keep you in the loop as it develops. Let's go to your phone calls here. Tom's in New Hampshire. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, something about the price of gasoline I want to bring up here, especially anybody whose car or whose vehicle requires mid-grade gasoline. Okay?
Whose car requires mid-grade?
Yeah, I've only ever seen premium and regular.
Well, there's regular, which is 87 octane.
Yeah.
Mid-grade is 89, and premium, which is 93.
Okay.
Now, the thing is, 89 is closer to 87 than it is to 93. Okay, on a number line. But the price of 89 octane is a lot closer to the price of 93 octane than it is to the 87 octane. So, 3 times 89, like 3 gallons, 89, that's a total of, let's just say, 267. Well, 93 plus 2 gallons of 87, it adds up to 267, the same thing. So, like you buy 1 gallon.
You're losing me with the numbers here, Tom.
What I'm getting at is 1 gallon of 93 octane and 2 gallons of regular, you save money. It splashes together and makes 89 octane.
Okay, there you go. There's a buying tip there from Tom on your gas pumps for those of you that are looking to, I guess, spend more than the cheap stuff.
But if a chicken and a half can lay an egg and a half in a day and a half, how long would it take a grasshopper with a wooden leg to kick all the seeds out of it and do a pickle?
We're coming up.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover springs her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here. If you want to join us, you can. 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. We were talking about the library case where the federal government is going after the world's premier decentralized YouTube alternative. Because YouTube is a centrally controlled, centrally managed, mega corporate, big tech corporation that, of course, everybody knows about YouTube. And, of course, it's been getting worse with its censorship and its crackdowns over the years, and they've got a new thing they're going to be cracking down on. We'll tell you about that coming up here in a moment. It's Ian, Nobody, and Chris in the studio, but first we go to Sarah. She's on the line in New Mexico. Sarah, go ahead.
Oh, yes, we have a homeless shelter like 10 miles out of town. It used to be a formal jail. And then the homeless people do not want to go stay there. So we're going to build that so-called Gateway Center, but it's going to be very well, how do you say, kind of like they have to have a purpose of why they're there. So they have to be sober, and so they're going to have a
Does
case
it's
manager.
cold outside count as a purpose?
Well, I think I've been talking to the mayor's liaisons, and then they're telling me that they have to be looking for a house, they have to be working with a social worker, that they have to be sober and clean, but they'll all be getting their own room, which sounds good, and which that people will, homeless people that want to get help will get help, and it sounds like it's going to be way better than what we got going now. You know, the jail with no washing machine, there's no washer and dryer hookup. There's no kitchen. This used to be a hospital, so that does have a cafeteria. You could cook meals, even if it's beans and rice. It could be a hot
I don't have
meal.
any of that stuff either, and I pay rent.
So, Sarah, are you just calling to brag about the new homeless facility that taxpayers are going to be on the hook for? I presume this is a government facility, right?
Well, it's not about the bragging. You know, I just want to shed the light. When the outreaches go out and it's like, we got a homeless shelter, we got a bed for you. You know what they tell them? It's like, are you going to stay there? Why don't you stay there? Well, if you're not going to stay there, why are you telling us to go stay there? Why don't you sleep on that prison bunk bed and fall off 4.5 feet and crack your head? You know, that's what they got for them, with no ladders. You know, it used to be a formal jail, and if you wash a pair of socks, you have to hide it, hope that they don't find that. You wash it in the shower because they throw you out.
Why do you have to hide your socks?
Because you're not allowed to wash any kind of clothes.
At the current facility, you're saying there's a prohibition on washing things because there's no washing machine.
No washing machines. So then.
That's such perfect government thinking. If you don't have a washing machine, we have to actively prevent you from washing anything because you don't have a licensed machine to wash things for you.
That is crazy.
It is crazy. And then they always check the temperature when you get for COVID, and they want it to sanitize, but nobody's allowed to wash their clothes. And people do wash their clothes out in the shower, but if you
you think, just to clarify something,
I appreciate their washing their clothes. I think that's a good plan.
You think that this government agency that is running the current jail the homeless shelter that used to be a jail, used to be a jail, now it's a homeless shelter that you think is so bad, you think they're going to do the same people are going to do a better job at running the new facility that just happened to used to be a hospital instead of used to be a jail?
Well, I feel that it will be better because supposedly they're supposed to have their own room.
But it is the same people running it, right? It's the same company or the same organization, the same governmental organization that's going to be running it.
But it is the same people, but what they're doing is they want to modify why. They're looking at the
what they want is more money.
Antonio.
That's what they want, Sarah. This is a bureaucracy, so they want to expand their bureaucracy. They want to hire more bureaucrats. They want to have more facilities that they're in charge of. They want to have more people underneath them. They want to have more power. They want to have bigger budgets. And the very same people who are telling people they can't do X, Y, and Z that you think is so bad, they're going to be coming up with the same stupid, similar rules, but similarly stupid rules for the new facility. But they might have a washing machine.
Because no matter how much money you give to the government, they still won't have any common damn sense.
Thank you, Sarah, for the call tonight. The number is 603-283-6160. They don't have to because they keep getting funded no matter how bad they do it.
And common sense would be a detriment
The reason
in their business.
The reason
they'd end up finding simple ways to do things, and they wouldn't be able to employ as many of their cousins and brothers-in-law.
The reason you have to fund it is because they won't let us build a homeless shelter independent of the government through charity.
You can do that here in New Hampshire. You could probably do it.
100 Nights.
Yes, but it's highly regulated, and 100 Nights has all sorts of problems, doing their thing because they will only let them build in certain places, and it has to be voted on. Yeah. And anyway, if they just let them build.
Yeah, that's true.
It wouldn't be coming from our tax dollars.
Actually, interestingly,
and for that matter, if you had just let people build, there wouldn't be so many homeless people in the world. Because, when you say you've got to have, a big picture window in every damn room or whatever your local housing codes say, well, that increases the expense of housing. And in economics, an important thing to consider is always the marginal case. The marginal case is the guy who has a home now, but if you jack the price $100, he won't.
But don't you want to be safe? Don't you want to make sure those homeless people are safe?
No, I have I want to be safe from the damn government is what I want.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously the homeless whatever agency in New Mexico doesn't care because they're putting these people in an old jail. As Sarah points out, they're putting them on old jail bunks where you roll off that top bunk, it's a long way down to the hard concrete floor there. I mean, this is not a safe place at all, but that's what they got. And you can't sue them over it.
Yeah. And they don't have to follow the housing the
codes,
the building codes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's funny. They won't let them build homeless shelters not to code, or at least unless it's the government, right?
Yeah, that's right. YouTube now saying,
or a crony. If you're tied in with the government, if you bribe them enough,
it's like a not to code homeless shelter could be built safer, but not to code cheaper. But they won't let you do that, and instead they force people into a more dangerous situation where they don't have to comply with code, but because it's government. Yeah,
I mean, if they didn't monopolize all the unowned land, which they do, and they didn't enforce building codes, you could just take a piece of land, pitch a tent, live in a
build
tent,
a shack.
Or you build a shack, live in the shack,
tiny homes,
you build a cabin.
But now if you build a shack on land, even where you have permission to be, sometimes the city will come in and force you to shut down. They did that here in Keene a decade ago.
I don't think that's...
Even on land you own, it happens in state rep.
That's not even sometimes. That's often. That's more often than not.
All right, we got more coming up here. The YouTube. Their latest crackdown might not be on what you're expecting. We'll tell you about it coming up.
Carl Wattner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Wattner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The United Nations says there's been no let-up in attacks on Ukrainian civilians, but there is hope that grain shipments will soon begin after last week's UN-brokered deal was signed by Russia and Ukraine. From FSN's bureau at UN headquarters in New York, Will Denzelo reports.
Addressing a Security Council meeting, the UN Under-Secretary-General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Rosemary DiCarlo, said the recently brokered grain deal was a beacon of hope. It's believed the first shipment of grain could leave Ukraine on Friday, after key details are worked out. While there's optimism over the impact that'll have on global food prices, UN member states again traded accusations during the Security Council meeting. The US said Russia had set fire to the UN Charter and carried out war crimes in Ukraine. Moscow's representative at the UN said Western arms sent to Kiev are being used to kill children in the east of the country. William Denzelo, New York.
The governor of the American state of Kentucky has declared a state of emergency after at least 16 people died in flash floods caused by heavy rains. Governor Andy Beshear says he fears the death toll will rise. A Conservative member of the US Supreme Court has mocked world leaders, including Boris Johnson, Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry, after they condemned his controversial ruling last month overturning abortion rights in America. Speaking at a conference in Rome, Justice Samuel Alito brushed off criticism from several prominent figures, as FSN's Washington correspondent Benji Hire reports.
Samuel Alito, the man responsible for drafting the ruling rolling back the constitutional right to an abortion, said that he had the honour of writing
the only Supreme Court decision in the history of that institution that has been lambasted by a whole string of foreign leaders.
Amongst those referenced, French President Emmanuel Macron, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Prince Harry.
The Duke of Sussex addressed the United Nations and seemed to compare the decision with the Russian attack on Ukraine.
Mr. Alito, a Catholic, added in his address that religious liberty was under attack in many places. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted that the justice's politicised remarks should be alarming to voters. Benji Hire, Washington, D.C.
Inflation in the Eurozone soared again to 8.9% in July, according to flash estimates from the EU's statistics agency. It's a new record for the 19 countries that use the euro currency. And Sir Christopher Meyer, a former British ambassador to the United States, has died at the age of 78. He served in Washington during the administrations of Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and suffered a stroke while holidaying in the French Alps. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. You can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Freedom's Phoenix. It is your source for all news, economic, government overreach, insane government spending, and more. You can get today's headlines all in one place and from a fresh libertarian perspective over at freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedoms with an S. Phoenix.com. Here tonight, you've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
So YouTube, they have been getting worse as a platform over the years. There was a time when it was the glory days of YouTube, and it was this...
Oh, they rocked. You could just believe things and say them.
Right. It was a
decade before Google bought them.
Yeah.
Sometime around then, yeah. There was glory days when anybody could kind of express themselves there and create their own brand and get their following. And then in recent years, if you didn't do what YouTube wanted you to do, you're done. They cut your channel, they demonetize you. They would maybe keep your channel there, but then don't put you in the search results and essentially ghost. You're basically like a ghost channel or whatever. There's been
shadow ban.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, there have been all these nasty tricks, and then, of course, during COVID, they started banning people for quote-unquote misinformation.
Which nearly always turned out to be true.
Yes, later on, even the mainstream media admitted some of the so-called misinformation was the actual truth. But nonetheless, if it wasn't...
It was funny when they flipped it around, too, and they started blocking the other side of it. And
did they do that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'd block one side, and then they flip their position, and then they block the other side.
Oh, speaking of which, if you haven't noticed, there's athletes dropping dead all over the country.
Young athletes.
No apparent reason. So put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably going to get banned for just even having this discussion. Our channel has received multiple strikes in the last 2 years for various different quote-unquote medical misinformation, and that's just for having discussions about alternatives and other theories or viewpoints on this government mandates that have been shoved down people's throats.
Well, we should give them some good medical information then. YouTube, it's unhealthy to keep your cranium in your rectum.
Well, they're not getting any better. Now, YouTube last week said they're cracking down on videos containing what they call abortion misinformation and will take down videos deemed unsafe. Quote, today, they say, starting today and ramping up over the next few weeks, we will remove content that provides instructions for unsafe abortion methods or promotes false claims about abortion safety under our medical misinformation policies, they said in a tweet.
So does it seem to you like they're continuing to let the DNC decide what can be said there, or are they switching over to the RNC?
I am a little confused here. So they're saying you can't use the hanger method to have an abortion
I'm guessing
anymore?
that would be considered medical misinformation, whatever is not the officially accepted method, which is go to a doctor and, whatever the hell they do.
But you can't go to a doctor anymore because they changed the law, right, federally? Or the Supreme Court?
Well, the Supreme Court got rid of Roe versus Wade recently, which means that it's up to the states to decide what is and what is not legal as far as abortion. So it almost sounds like they're going with the RNC on this one.
It does.
Yeah, it is interesting. I would... It's strange.
YouTube's parent company, Google's come under fire in recent months after a group of lawmakers, by the way, this is from CNBC, I don't know if I mentioned that, began urging the company to clamp down on search results that allegedly steer people looking for abortion services to crisis pregnancy centers opposing abortion. Google announced earlier this month it will work to quickly delete location history for people going to abortion sites and other medical sites following the Supreme Court's overturning of Roe versus Wade. YouTube said Thursday, quote, like all of our policies on health/medical topics, we rely on published guidance from health authorities. We prioritize connecting people to content from authoritative sources on health topics.
They love the argument from authority.
They sure do. And we continuously review our policies and products as real-world events unfold. So unless your viewpoint is the official one, it does not belong on YouTube.
So here's a question. If you link
Nope, you're not allowed to question things.
The science is settled.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
If you say, I don't know, link to a European Union authoritative source.
Oh, that's okay.
That's okay. Well, what happens if you link to the U.S. one and the U.S. one contradicts the European?
They would never do that.
Most of the governments of the world do march in lockstep, pretty much.
The company said they're also launching an information panel to provide, quote, viewers with context and information from local and global health authorities.
Wow, you can get information from the same morons who lied to you about COVID for 2 years.
Don't worry, they're telling you the truth this time.
Oh, I've heard
you mean they didn't tell me the truth last time?
That lunatic in New Zealand is now the only source for truth in New Zealand.
Jacinda Ardern, I think is her name. We played that clip a few nights ago on the show. The sole source for truth. It's literally what this woman is saying.
She actually said it?
Yeah, the government is your only source for truth.
Oh, I want
to hear go to the Ministry of Truth.
Yeah, I'm surprised they don't call it that. Honestly, they do have multiple ministries of fill in the blank. There.
Well, of course, that's how the Ministry of Truth is named. They've always done it that way in British and British-ish countries.
Homeland Security. That's another one that I'm like, it's right out of a fiction, like a 1984 fiction novel type of dystopia.
The 1984 wasn't fiction; it was prophecy.
Fair enough.
Good.
So that's the update there. That's their latest crackdown that's coming from YouTube. I just thought that was an interesting update because it's not going to get better on that platform. So if you're still on YouTube, you really need to get over to Library and Odyssey. And the nice thing about Library and Odyssey is they make it really easy. So if you already have a YouTube channel, when you sign up over at Odyssey, go to Odyssey. You can easily access it through video.freetalklive.com. And when you create your account, there's just a little checkbox that says that you have a YouTube account and you want to ingest or copy over basically all of your YouTube videos to the Odyssey and Library platform, and then it just does it automatically for you. And then all of your videos from YouTube, or it takes depending on how many videos you have, it takes some number of hours or a day or whatever, but it'll be there.
Which means when YouTube decides that you're not politically correct and deletes your channel, all of your work will not go up in smoke.
Speaking of which, have you guys noticed that Odyssey has gotten better and works like way smoother than
they've upgraded their servers?
Yeah.
But it is a centralized site, so they on the back end they do still rely on Library if there are failures with their centralized servers. So they're still technically connected to Library, but in order for speed of service, they do have central data repositories.
Yeah.
So speaking of data and repositories, safe deposit boxes, we teased this one earlier. The FBI raided some vaults last year, a private business. It's called U.S. Private Vaults, based in Beverly Hills, and they sell safe deposit boxes. The FBI raided them to seize those boxes and assets belonging to hundreds of people who were never suspected of having committed crimes. And now prosecutors are trying to keep the public in the dark about why this effort was undertaken in the first place, and are offering little justification for why the secrecy is necessary.
We wanted and we took it. What's so hard to understand?
Attorneys representing the victims of the raid say the depositions could contain important information about how and why the FBI decided to seize and catalog the private belongings of their customers at U.S. private vaults, and they asked the federal judge handling the case to allow transcripts of those depositions in question, including one interview with Lynn Zellhart, the FBI's lead agent in the case, to be filed in their entirety. Unless Judge R. Gary Klausner allows the depositions to be made public, attorneys for the plaintiffs will have to continue heavily redacting their filings in the case, and that might be sufficient to address the acute legal issues in the lawsuit, but it obviously harms the general public's right to be informed about the bigger issues at stake. Reason magazine, which is doing the reporting here, has been covering the case since the beginning, plans to file its own brief requesting the depositions be unsealed. Quote, if the government is successful, it means the public will have only an incomplete window on what happened here, says an attorney for the Institute of Justice, by the way, great libertarian law firm.
Like those guys.
Representing some of the customers. They told Reason, quote, that flips the public's right of access on its head. And we'll tell you more about what happened in this case. You can share your thoughts as well. The number 603-283-6160. Again, they just raided this business, which had private safe deposit boxes, and just took a bunch of stuff, apparently without any justification whatsoever for it. They're not talking about it. There's more on the way here, and you can share your thoughts. Again, 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. You can join us here, 603-283-6160, and bring up whatever you want. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Nobody, and Chris in the studio here tonight. And, of course, you can join us anytime you want over at freetalklive.com. Thanks to Eli123KY, who is a Free Talk Live supporter of our AMPS Patreon. You can join him over at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live and get some cool perks, some benefits for you when you sign up over at amps.freetalklive.com. Let's go to James in Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live, James.
Hey, I know I'm a little off subject, but I was going to talk about a story you and Bonnie and Nikki talked about 2 nights ago.
Sure, what was that?
I was listening to a re-air about the jail story in Clark County, Indiana.
Oh, the jail, right, where they there were 2 jail guard, or there was a jail guard who gave the keys to 2 male inmates to the female cell block, and then multiple male inmates went over and commenced to rape and assault in various different ways the women in that cell block, and the jail acted like, well, no one saw this happening. How did this happen? And pretended to be completely ignorant about it.
Well, what I'm going to say is, I'm totally unsurprised by the events because that's what I expect, unfortunately. What I am surprised by is how our society has become so complacent that these same people are allowed to eat in restaurants, shop in stores, and generally live next to families and children and people that just want to turn a blind eye to this.
Yeah, when you say these same people, you mean the corrections officers and the administrators of the jail?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They should be driven from society.
Right. So one of my famous stories my father would tell me from Milwaukee County was back in the 50s, there was a very corrupt sheriff, because you can imagine it was pretty crooked back then, and he'd stretched too far into regular stores and regular people. He turned up floating down the river one day, and the next day there was a new sheriff, and nobody cared.
Well, who's going to miss a corrupt sheriff?
Right.
Sounds like a public service.
What happened? Yeah.
Never found out.
I mean, maybe all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's nothing I could do. What am I going to do? Turn this guy his way? He's eating in my restaurant. Well, he's a crooked criminal. Of course you're going to turn him away.
You could say no cops here. No cops allowed. We won't serve you.
That doesn't sound like it would end very well, but
it happened. There was one, I think it was like a leftist bookstore out in, I don't know if it was Portland or Seattle or something, years ago. I mean, they were commies, but they were right about this one where they just refused service to any law enforcement. And that was their right to do that. James, thanks for the call tonight. I do appreciate hearing from you and the thoughts. Let's talk to Jack in Washington. You're on Free Talk Live. Jack.
Yeah, I have a question for nobody.
Here it is.
Okay.
Are you happy today? Because a lot of us listeners listen a lot, actually care. So do you feel kind of relieved? Because I feel you
I'm kind of relieved. I mean, I just had 80% of my net worth stolen, and I had just very little to begin with, so I'm not real happy about that. But you know, I'm glad not to have to deal as directly with these psychopaths for a while. I guess that's the main thing. It's exhausting, you know, and you know, when you don't have much to begin with, and it's just surviving is an effort. Having these lunatics on your case all the time is just draining.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's this might be a good opportunity to thank the people who contributed to recuperating for with the raids and everything, because that did help in terms of somewhat compensating. For you know, not necessarily the government's. Well, I guess some of that was stolen money. So yeah.
Anything else, Jack?
Oh, just you know, we're all these crazy callers in this, you know, time period of the earth, and there's a lot of people that really care about you guys.
Thanks, Jack.
Worried about all of you.
Appreciate the kind
Thanks,
words,
man.
and thanks for checking in here tonight.
Yeah.
All right, so a little more here from Reason. So they're reporting on this case where the FBI took a bunch of people's stuff with no reason whatsoever. They raided a business called U.S. Private Vaults, and Reason reported that there are substantial constitutional issues raised by this raid that ought to worry any American concerned about privacy. Before raiding the business, the FBI built a lengthy case against U.S. Private Vaults owners who have been charged with several crimes, but the business's hundreds of customers were viewed as guilty by association, and the FBI's affidavit seeking permission to seize the safe deposit boxes stored at their office relied on sweeping generalizations rather than specific allegations of wrongdoing. Importantly, the warrant authorizing the raid explicitly forbade the FBI from seizing the safe deposit boxes or their contents. But
see, I don't understand how they can publicly justify if they went in and just stole stuff that they were not authorized to take. Why are they not in prison?
Okay, this is the hilarious part. They were authorized to seize the thing that the boxes were on, but not the boxes themselves. God. And this is why it was like they have like a defense, even though it explicitly said they cannot search the boxes themselves.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, there's some states, I guess, that have locked themselves into contracts with private prisons that require them to keep these prisons full.
That's right.
And I think what we should do is, to the extent that those contracts are enforceable, great. Fill them up with law enforcement. Fill them up with legislators. Fill them up with politicians. Fill them up with the scum of the earth.
Agents seized hundreds of safe deposit boxes anyway, then opened them and rifled through their contents under the guise of cataloging the items. That effort seems to have been a little more than a fishing expedition in search of additional criminality, and attorneys for the victims of the FBI's warrantless search...
What did they need more criminality for? It sounds like they had plenty of criminality.
Just looking at their own office. Are now asking that all records created by that effort be destroyed. Why do the depositions matter to all this? The interviews with the head head agent and other officers who authorized the raid could clarify key aspects of its planning and execution. Some of that might not matter to the lawsuits, but it would give the public a better view of why the FBI believed they had the authority to conduct the privacy-violating seizures. For example, the information provided by Jesse Murray, the head of the forfeiture unit at the LA field office, could give public vital insights into how the FBI views its powers to seize and forfeit private property, but there's no way for the average person to get that information now. In a brief filed Monday, prosecutors made no substantial claims about why the information in the 4 depositions should be kept secret. Instead, they argued that a customary practice means the only pages of depositions filed as part of the legal record would be those specifically cited in the plaintiff's opening briefs. In other words, if attorneys for the plaintiffs agree to limit the pages of transcripts filed, they would be able to unredact the citations in their briefs. In return, the rest of the depositions would remain confidential. So that's a little confusing to me, but apparently they're trying to cut some kind of a deal to where some pages would be allowed public, but the rest of them would remain sealed. But why keep
that saying that the people who are suing, but the people would be revealed, but not the people who are not suing?
Somehow the attorneys for the plaintiffs would agree to limit the number of pages filed. They would be able to unredact certain citations. In return for the rest being,
it seems very
unclear.
unclear.
It's very scummy, very sneaky sounding. But why keep any part secret? The public has a right to know how the plan to raid the vaults unfolded, particularly in light of the ruling last year in a related case that the FBI had provided no factual basis for the seizures. Separately, in a ruling that denied the government's attempt to get a lawsuit over the seized items dismissed, Klausner found the government's case against Private Vault's customers was not based on, quote, anything more than pure conjecture, unquote.
There is some information that I think should be redacted, and that is...
Like the names of the customers?
Specifically the names of the customers and the contents of their boxes. Their privacy has already been violated, and that should not be compounded by then publishing what they found in these violations.
That makes sense.
But
that's not what they're trying to protect.
But the government doesn't have a right to secrets. The government is supposed to be servants of the people. Obviously, they're not. They're slave masters.
You laugh, but that really is how it's supposed to be.
But they don't act like servants.
No, they don't.
No. They are the masters.
Yeah.
We are the slaves. They hold the whips.
And we are out of time for tonight. You can join us tomorrow night online between now and then. You can find us online over at freetalklive.com. By the way, now that nobody is off of his restrictions from pretrial, he can be back on social media. So once you're back, we'll announce it here on Free Talk Live. Stay tuned for that.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative.